All right. Hey, good morning. Welcome into the Rise and Grind Morning Show, man. It is week 2 NFL free agency. What are the Lions going to do? Are they going to be players in week 2? We're going to talk about it. Latest news, we're going to dip into about your Detroit Lions. Biggest spenders in free agency. Who's winning the North race? Is it even a race?
Pressured by Hutchinson, he goes down again.
All right. Hey, good morning. Welcome in, everybody. And it is Monday. Man, can you believe it? We're already into the second week of free agency. First week seemed like it took forever. I didn't know if I was going to make it through all the marathon days that we had last week talking Detroit Lions. But I got to thank all of you for showing up. I know it's going to die off big time probably this week because all of the craziness is pretty much done. There's a few names out there left to be signed. We'll see if the Lions get more active in the coming days. But honestly, I think they've done a pretty good job. We're going to dissect it today. We're going to look at the NFC North, the biggest spenders around the league, who did what, who got better. Eric is off. He's got business things to do this week. And crazy snowmageddon, crazy weather here in Michigan. Just nutty. Whole line of storms from, the Lake Superior all the way down to Texas. It seemed like. I mean, there was a line of storms last night that rolled through. Over 20 inches of snow, I guess, up in the UP. And then we've just been getting pounded with rain and tornadic type weather. And now it dropped to 16 degrees. So be safe out there. I know Eric's got a long journey to get down, towards me anyway, for his Rock, Gem, and Mineral show. So if you're in the Jackson area this week, get out there and support him. Stop in and say hi. Let's get into it. Good morning, everybody in the chat. John Desage, Raw B, Mr. Thomas, K-Biz, One Major, Attila, and everybody else. Pretty light chat today. We got it opened up this morning. Brandon Martin, good morning. Kyle Van Noy still out there. Yeah, he's probably gonna remain out there, to be honest with you. He's like 34 years old or 36 years old. Not a direct fit to come back to Detroit. For some reason, I don't understand. And I'm glad you just mentioned an edge type of linebacker player, because I want to start out with, I've got to call this, God, do they even call themselves a media company? I got to call Heavy out, man. Why? Because they're calling out the Lions. And it's this type of clickbait stuff that just drives me absolutely nuts. It's why I do what I do. Part of the reason why I do what I do. But when I seen this pop up, I don't even know when it popped up. This morning, maybe I saw it. Said, Lions get called out for cutting a player who easily landed new team. I think they forgot a word or two in there. But let me be very clear. The Lions have not cut anyone. I know it's tough to understand all the football lingo. Hell, I learn new stuff every day. But there is zero cutting going on in free agency. You might release a player. You might let a player test free agency. These players are unrestricted free agents or exclusive rights free agents or restricted rights free agents. In some cases, you have some street free agents. But there's no cutting. Absolutely zero cutting that has gone on in Detroit. Taylor Decker was released. But this article goes on to talk about, and I don't know who this Ann Erickson individual is, but it's just a constant vitriol of toxic energy, man. Toxic media. Saying that the Detroit Lions have made a handful of strong moves in the NFL free agency, such as officially signing running back Izien Pacheco from the Kansas City Chiefs. Well, I mean, his former team was the Kansas City Chiefs. But he's not from anywhere. He was a free agent. He was from his home or wherever he was. But they also made a splash by letting players go. Well, they didn't let anyone go. They were already gone. As of 4 p.m. on Wednesday, those players became free agents. They could sign anywhere. And since Monday, they were conversating with whatever teams that they felt that they had a chance to land with. So on Wednesday, it goes on to say that they let defensive end Al-Quadin Muhammad walk. Now, I have a hard time understanding this because, last year I got read the riot act by a lot of fans telling me that AQM was not the answer, that the Lions didn't do anything again in free agency. And we didn't go out and spend $40 million on another edge. And I made a video, which I watched the other day. Someone sent it to me and said, came across your video. Can't believe how spot on it was. You should rewatch it. Talk about it. So I did. Hit it pretty spot on with what AQM was going to mean to this team. Ended up being a double-digit sack guy. Second sack leader on the team. The only team in the league with 2 defensive ends with 10 or more sacks. It's a great season. But he was brought in on the bargain bin Brad, right? I mean, some people refer to him as bargain bin Brad or the Dollar General manager. And he brings him in on a stupid low contract. I think it was like 1.5 or something like that. Well, he just 4 times his value by having 11 sacks last season. So, of course, if he gets an opportunity to sign for $6 million with Tampa Bay, going to work with Alex Anzalone, that's the right move. Is it the wrong move that the Lions let him go? I don't think so. I feel like I would have loved to have had him come back. Or not that I feel. I know that I would have loved to have Al-Quadin Muhammad back in the room because I feel like the continuity would have been there and he was coming off a great season. However, I'm just going to put it like this. It's the Kirby test all over again. When players have an extremely good season or a record-breaking season or a career-defining season, it is probably a less than 10% chance that player is even going to sniff the same shoes that they wore the last season and become the same player. Now, I think Al-Quadin Muhammad could probably throw, half a dozen in there. Probably, earn a few more snaps, but he was a primary third down specialist getting after the quarterback. Would it have been easy for the Lions to bring him back and overpay him? Yes. That's the easy way to do it. Is it harder to attack free agency from the perspective that you're trying to stay young? You're trying to manage what little cap that you have. I mean, the Lions knew that they had the restructure in place, but operating with $45 million is not a lot of money. I mean, it might place, middle of the pack within the league as far as what everybody else was holding, but that's not a lot of money to go out and make a bunch of waves with. So it's the articles like this that just, this is why I do what I do. Is part of what I do is to push back against the narratives. So I never just write something to get a narrative out there or to push a narrative. My goal is to give you what truth, honesty, and transparency it is that I dig up throughout research and through my opinions that are based on research. I don't want to drive the BS. So I always feel like that agency, that media agency, that's all I ever see. And it makes me believe, like, I don't even know who Ann Erickson is. I've never seen this person live. Makes me wonder how many ghost accounts are out there, because it mirrors almost identical to other types of writing that you see in the local market. So anyway, I do not believe that the Lions made a mistake. And like Jay Cruzen just mentioned, it's AQM's agents' fault. It could be, their agents are what control the purse strings here. I think all agents and players have conversations, and at the end of the day, when you sign a contract with an agency, you have two choices: trust them completely or fire them. That's it. And depending on what your contract says, firing them may include a hefty fine or fee or something else. AQM got a bag for his age and for low production that he's had throughout his career. But he is the exact model of the player that I thought he was going to be in Detroit his second time around, when he had an opportunity to build through the training camp and get an entire offseason inside the program. So what is stopping the Lions from doing that again? Nothing. Every time the Lions seem to bring players in through free agency, it seems like when they walk out onto the other side, when they leave this team, they're a better football player. They're getting more money. I don't remember who said it the other day, but they made the comment that our free agents are tending to get more money in other places. That may be true to a certain extent with some players, but I also want to remind everyone that the reason why that happens is largely because Brad Holmes brings in contender deals or prove-it deals, depending on the player. And so when they come in on a low-budget, one-year deal, it's the exact model that Brad has been using since 2021. It's no different, hasn't changed. Through 2021, let me back that up. 2021, 22 is a little bit different. I think that you're building a team versus supplementing a team in free agency, and that's what Brad was doing in 2021 and 2022, was building. Now he's supplementing. Now he's filling holes, right? Take a look at my notes here real quick. The interesting thing is the roster churn. I don't know who said it the other day, but it might have been in a comment in one of my videos, or it might have been a comment on Twitter. It's someone had mentioned that, all Brad ever does is bring in these one-year deals. And that's not building this team. That's not making this team better, whatever the comment was. And I'm like, newsflash, that's what he does. And that's what a large majority of general managers also do. It's part of the process. And quite honestly, I've been following what Brad's model has been. Not that I know it to a T, because I would never know all of it. But I get a good idea that Brad likes 10 to 15% of roster churn. Pretty much every team goes through 10 to 15% or more of roster churn every season. But I think what I'm noticing now is, he went in and he committed to a couple of guys for a little bit longer term, 23, 24, 25. And now they're getting back to the roots of 22. And they mentioned as much. I know I've said it a couple of times. They've mentioned it as much, that they want to get back to that, which is one-year deals, prove-it deals, contender deals, whatever you want to refer to them as, and then competition, high competition. It keeps the team on its toes. It keeps the energy at a much higher level, higher state. And I think it's the right way to build a team, especially when you're trying to run for a Super Bowl, which the Lions, I'm not going to call it a window, but they're in that vessel, man. They are in the vessel to be able to go the distance. They have the core nucleus that is intact. It should all be fully healthy this year. Outside of Brian Branch, Kirby Joseph could surprise us. There's been talk that he is planning to be the comeback player of the year this year. I don't even know what to say to that. I really don't. Like, I'm not going to fully invest myself if I'm Brad Holmes in Kirby Joseph. I don't care about the contract. Sometimes you just got to walk away. Then I'm not saying walk away from Kirby. I'm saying that this is his last year in Detroit if he can't play. And if he can't play to a high level, and the last thing I think that all of us would want is to have a player out on the field that is injured and not play into their fullest potential. If you are injured whatsoever, you do not need to be out on that field. I think that Calvin Shepard said it best last year. Maybe it was the end of the season before. And I think it was last year. It was after after Terry and Arnold got torched one of the first few games of the year. And he started saying something about being injured. And Shepard shut that right down. And was like, we're not doing that. We're not making excuses. We're not talking. If you're injured, get off the field. Don't go out there and half-ass it. You're either out there to play or get your ass on the bench. I think that's the right way to handle it. So, not to get too lost in the sauce this morning, it's kind of an unplanned day to go through a few things. These are just the things that are on the tip of my mind this morning. Tip of the spear is sharp today. There's some things happening in Detroit with this team that are going in the right direction. There's some things that certain fans just can't let go of. It's not about being right or wrong anymore. It really isn't. As much as I love to be right, I'm okay if I'm wrong. But for 3, 4, 5 years now, the constant peddling of edge, and Brad, Dollar General Holmes, and hot seat, and fire Brad if Davenport comes back, and all this other crap, that does nothing for a fan to become smarter, more intelligent, understand what's going on with your team. All it does is sow divisiveness. I guess some people just love to live in that toxic waste pool. I won't. Be back in 30 seconds. We're going to jump right into free agency. Winners, losers, or better yet, bigger spenders. And I'm going to jump back into the chat here. Be right back.
Throwing middle, caught inside the 5. Jameer Gibbs to the end zone. Touchdown, Detroit Lions. 14 yards on the strike. Goff to Gibbs. You can't cover that man one-on-one. You just can't do it.
Nice job.
Jared takes the snap back, looking, throwing middle. Got Amon-Ra inside the 2, to the 1, to the end zone. Touchdown, Detroit Lions. Amon-Ra, St. Brown. Amon-Ra, St. Brown.
Nice job.
Mariota's got it back. Pressure comes. He's hit. Slips out of it. Rolling to his right. Now he's going down. Brian Branch got him. Sack for the Lions. Snap.
Pressured by Hutchinson. He goes down again.
All right, sorry about that. I had to pause for a second to do my audio check. I was trying to see if we were gonna try to get J-Rod on the phone today. I don't see him. I don't see him in the chat. I guess there's been some issues with people thinking that J-Rod, and I think it's J-Rod 313, one of the mods, a longtime supporter of the channel, gave him an opportunity to be a mod. Did people think it's like some sort of a burner account of mine? First of all, I don't got time for that stuff. I don't do burner accounts. I can barely handle all the stuff that I have going on. If you have that amount of time, I would probably question how successful you are. Because if you have time to do that kind of crap, you clearly aren't successful enough to keep yourself busy. So with that being said, he was going to try to call in, I thought. And we were going to try to clear it up, but I'm not seeing anything. So if he pops in, we'll do it. If he doesn't, we won't. But anyway, just know it's not me. I ain't got time for that stuff. No way. No how. And it's also pretty sad that, other people pick on, or attack other mods of channels because they're, I don't know, jealous of success, I guess. I don't get it. I don't know what else it could be. I don't know. Stop saying that an Edge is coming to Detroit when it's a flat out lie and you won't get called out. How about that? How about that? Meet me outside. How about that? Or cash me outside, right? Whatever the hell she said. Told you that tip of the spear. Tip of the spear. Sharp today. Yeah, there you go, Nick Peace. That's funny. Says, I'm the real burner account of Will. I'm the opposite side of Will. He wants to get out. There you go. It's hilarious. You would think, that would actually make more sense that if I did something like that, that it would be the exact opposite of what I say just to start BS. And it's funny because somebody, I know this for a fact, does that. Somebody got called out and caught for having burner accounts and putting things in chat, and it was all over YouTube, and they got completely busted. And that individual is just toxic wasteland. So that's hilarious. That is absolutely hilarious. I better charge my phone so I can make sure my burner account works. But yeah, I told J-Rod, I was like, you know what? I said, you call in. I'm just going to put my hands up like this, and then you just start sending chats in. Because that way, I can't do it. Because you can't schedule chat messages to go into the chat. That would be some pretty sophisticated stuff if you could do it. I don't know how. But I've never seen it done. So, it's just people are stupid, man. People are dumb. Let's not be dumb this morning. Let's have some fun. All right, let's get into the biggest spenders, man. There's some big spenders. Righty, let's do it. Attila said, could all be pre-filmed. What's pre-filmed? What are we talking about? Like this show's pre-filmed? It's live, dumb. I mean, how could we be that dumb about it? It's live. It's live. I mean, do I need to hold up a newspaper like I got some ransom on someone? So it shows the date. I don't even know where to get a newspaper. I haven't seen a newspaper in 15 years. So anyway, biggest spenders in free agency right now. Tennessee Titans just shocked. Yeah, I know you're joking. I know you are. Just shocked the shnikes out of me, man. $300 million spent on 16 contracts so far this offseason. Who thinks the Tennessee Titans are winning a Super Bowl this year? Right? Because according to a lot of local media, I'll just say, Michigan media, that if you spend the most, you're going to get the best, and you're going to win a Super Bowl. Now, excuse me. I still got this junk coming up out of me. Prior to the season starting, I was kind of all in already on Las Vegas. And I had mentioned as much. Matter of fact, where did I put them? Where did I put them? I can't see. I put them at third in their division to start. That was at the very end of last year. But I was all in on them prior to free agency having a good year this year. Simply because they're going to get a decent quarterback. I think he's a great processor, and I think he does a lot of things right. I don't think he's that great of an athlete. I don't think he has that great of an arm. But neither did Tom Brady, and there's ways to work around that, right? You can work through the scheme. But man, did they bring in the right moves this year to actually threaten, the rest of that division? And Kansas City has taken notice, and they're not screwing around either. So Las Vegas, bringing the players that they brought in, spending $287 million. I never expected them to get outpaced by Tennessee. But when you have sucked for such a long time, you have a lot of money to spend simply because they didn't have the contracts. They didn't have the team. They don't have a core. And I think that's what you're seeing out of some of these teams is they just don't have the core built. They're trying to bring in a core, and then they're going to continue to build around that through the draft. It's not all done in Tennessee. I mean, Cam Ward, first of all, has to wake up and become a pretty good quarterback for them to even have an opportunity. Same thing in Las Vegas. Like, Fernando Mendoza needs to come in with that championship pedigree and hit the ground running. I mean, they already have the running back. Ashton Gianti is going to be special when they finally, give him an offensive line to run behind. But then they lost Max Crosby. And, I mean, that is a big deal. But I also believe to a lesser extent, is it really a big deal? I think they're going to be just fine without him. And I think that this draft offers enough, later round opportunity to fill in at the edge position. Matter of fact, last night I spent, a little over an hour and a half, whatever it was, with Coach DC there, all 22. We did a pre-recorded video for the new digital magazine launch, which, by the way, it's out there. We'll talk about it tomorrow morning, and we'll do a little launch here right about 9:00 in the morning. You should be excited. This is a one-stop shop magazine that is going to totally revolutionize how players are evaluated. And multiple contributors and collaborators came together on this and have made it something super special. So I'm very thankful to be part of it. But anyway, we were talking about the edge position. And I said, because he asked me, what is my plan for the Lions? And I'm still sticking with Caden Proctor right now. Depending on what else happens with the draft or what comes out, after pro days, or some pro days this week we got to pay attention to. But I'm still sticking and picking at 17. I don't think that I would want to trade back and risk losing the next generational type player that Caden Proctor could be, or whoever that other left tackle could be. And that's assuming that Panay's staying to the right side and not going to the left. So for right now, it's Caden, right? And I said, there's plenty of opportunity in the second round. Guys like Malachi Lawrence or Zion Young, Danny Dennis Sutton. I mean, there's great options. And quite honestly, after the top 10 picks are done or top 15 are done, all you have left are second-tier edge rushers through the second round. But when you get into the third round, Jashan Barham, and there's some other ones that, they may not be high floor athletes coming in, and they may take a little bit of time to develop the pass rush, like Keldrick Falk. I mean, he has all the measurables, all the intangibles, but his pass rush upside is not great. Right now, it will be. Give him a season and a half, and I think he'll be knocking down the door, probably a 10-sack guy. But it's going to take some time, unless you're installed in the right system, the right scheme, and you stay healthy. So I'm kind of parlaying this conversation in with, the biggest winners and losers or biggest spenders, I guess, in free agency. Losing a guy like Max Crosby will be less of an impact than what they've done in free agency and more so what they're going to be able to backfill with in the draft. Sorry, excuse me. Yeah, Proctor isn't good. Okay. You can be the only person saying that. You might want to go through the new digital magazine. You'll figure it out. Washington spent $231 million. Now, what we're not going through right now is the players that they brought in. Which we have right here. So here we go. They brought in Connor Haywood. He signed a 2-year, $5.5 million deal. They brought in Jalen Naylor, so they brought in a receiver for Fernando Mendoza. They brought in a center, which is totally going to revolutionize what they're doing up front. And then they also backfilled the edge position already with Malcolm Kuntz, which, I mean, he's been in the free agency pool now each of the last 2 seasons. The fact that he only signed an $11 million deal, that's quite inexpensive, but he's also been somebody that hasn't been able to stay healthy. Well, then they doubled down and they brought in Kwity Paye, who signed a massive contract. I think it was 3 for $48, or I think it was 3 for $48. And then they brought in 2 linebackers, Nakobe Dean and Quay Walker, where they spent massive amounts of money again. $36 million, $40.5 million. They grabbed a corner, former Buffalo Bill. So they traded. They traded. What does that say there? Acquired in a trade with the Buffalo Bills, along with a 26th, 7th round pick, in exchange for a 6th round pick in 2026. Now, this is a move that I would have loved to have seen the Lions make. You know, trading away a 6th round pick to bring in a corner that, you know, has a higher floor because they've got some action in the league. Maybe they're not going to be, you know, that all-star that you're looking for, but then they doubled down again and brought in Eric Stokes, who's a damn good corner. So what I'm seeing out of the free agency period for somebody like Vegas is they just won big time. Not only did they get the number 1 center, but they doubled down at 3 positions: edge, linebacker, and corner. And this, in my opinion, if you got the money that they have and you haven't developed a team yet, there's 2 ways to go about it. You draft and develop and wait, or you go out and spend a boatload in free agency, and now you have to do nothing but draft and then hopefully be able to re-sign your guys in 3 seasons or 4 seasons. So they got the motor running. Now the question is, are all of these players going to work well together? Are they going to be able to build a good culture together? And I would say that they've got a couple of players here that can help them do that. I think that Nakobe Dean is, he's a solid leader. I think Kwity Paye is a solid leader. Tyler Linderbaum's a solid leader. Outside of that, Connor Haywood is a solid leader. They've got some guys to develop with. All right, let's go to Tennessee. Tennessee brought in Mitchell Trubisky. I mean, that doesn't really shake the tree for me. Wide receiver Wan'Dale Robinson signed a massive 4-year, $78 million deal. They brought in 2 tight ends that aren't worth a darn. They brought in an offensive guard who's not worth a darn. They brought in Austin Schlottman at center, who's average at best. And then they went in on Jermaine Johnson, which I love this pickup for Tennessee. I think that he's a really good player. But they then got rid of Trevonde Sweat. So it makes me wonder if the Jets are going in a different direction defensively. Are they not going to use the big nose tackle anymore? Are they going to get a little bit, lighter and Maybe switch up to somewhat of a 3-4 style. I don't know. I guess we'll see. But then they brought in Jordan Elliott, John Franklin Myers, so they replaced another big body, with a bigger, faster body in Franklin Myers. Signed him to a good deal. Then they brought in 2 more. So Tennessee, Tennessee went all in on defensive line. They got 2, backups. They got 2 starters. Then they went on 3 corners. They filled out their cornerback room, bringing in Cordell Flott, great signing. Alontae Taylor, great signing, and then a backup. So I think that both of these teams absolutely masterclassed free agency with the type of money they spent. You have to do it right. And I think that both of those teams did it right. They did not overspend on just one position, or 2 positions. They went in and secured multiple positions. You're bringing in 2 tight ends, 2 edge, 4 defensive linemen, and 3 corners. That's smart free agency movement right there. It's really smart. We'll see how it works out for them. Washington. Now, Washington, really good team in 2024. The question is, who are they in 2026? They had a backseat year last year. Brought in Marcus Mariota as the backup. That's a great signing. I wanted to see Marcus Mariota in Detroit. I don't know why the Lions decided not to do it. They didn't do it. They brought in Teddy B instead. They could have brought both of them in, to be honest with you. But Marcus Mariota gives you that upside that if you do need someone to go in and win a game, that he can do it. Teddy B, I'm less invigorated on because I don't see it. I see the quarterback's coach, right? I see the coach in him, and that's needed. I think that he's a great leader, but his upside on the field, not so much anymore. They brought in Jerome Ford. Rashad White was a great pickup. Jerome Ford being a backup's not a terrible backup. Diami Brown, cheap signing for a receiver. Treylon Burks has not turned out to be the player that people expected. Van Jefferson, he's just a consistent guy, but he's not breaking you off the top. And then they brought in Chig. They brought in Chig for 3 years at $30 million, which is exactly where I thought that he was going to go in that $8-9 million range. He got a little bit more. I think that's a great pickup for them, and I think that's going to give Jaden Daniels a nice outlet up the seam. He hasn't really underperformed, but there's more that you can get out of him. Well, they didn't stop there. They brought in Laramie Tunsil to help fix the front, offensive line issue. Nick Allegretti, who's been around for a minute, and then Trent Scott, and then Andrew Wiley. So they did exactly what the other 3 teams did at the top of this list. They went in and secured multiple positions: running back, receiver, offensive line, and then edge. They brought in 4 edge defenders: Clavon Chasen, Charles Omenihu, Odafe Owe, Deatrick Wise, and then another defensive tackle in Tim Settle, who honestly, Tim Settle's not a bad player. He's a really good player. Well, then they went down even further, man. They went down to the mud, and they found their guy, Amik Robertson. The guy that says you can't kill what comes from the dirt, you absolutely can't. Meek's going to be on that team. He's going to be a huge impact on that team. And then they brought in the guy that I wanted to see in Detroit on a 2-year, $14 million deal. Nobody thought it was possible to bring in Nick Cross for that kind of money. I thought it was possible. I don't know why the Lions didn't do it, quite honestly. Sometimes you just got to pony up the money. Nick Cross would have been a huge signing for us in Detroit. We brought in Roger McCreary, which I'll talk about here in a little bit. My understanding is that I don't think that deal's been released yet, but it could be somewhere in that $6 to $7 million range. And so I've got questions now. I have some questions. I like the Roger McCreary pickup, but at the same time, I have questions. I'll just leave it at that for right now. So they secured their DBs with Nick Cross and Amik Robertson to add to the room already. They brought in Leo Chenal, who's a pretty good linebacker, right? They settled up their edge. I mean, their edge room is going to be pretty impressive. Obviously, Whey is going to lead the room. Charles Omenihu and Clavon Chason, I mean, they can give you some significant snaps, but it's not like they went out and got 4 $30 million guys. They got some guys that can play, though. So they secured the O-line. They secured the wide receiver room, the running back room. I mean, they went deep. Right now, I mean, they could be the winners of free agency, and they're going to be a thorn in our ass at the end of the season. We'll get into a couple more here. Carolina, New England went all in again. They spent a boatload of money last year. I think they spent close to $400 million or something crazy like that. I'd have to go back and look. It was a big number. Let me just do this real quick. I'll just go look. Maybe it was $200 million in guarantees or something. Oh, there it is. $364 million they spent last year. And they just went out and spent another $185 million. Now, remember that these contracts, and those are the contracts' value. That's not the total guarantees, and that's the value over the life of the contract. So not all of that is going to hit in year one. And there is a question that I have for the front office in Detroit. And that is, are we not operating with cash anymore? Because there's one thing that has changed within the league that we identified this last year in 25, that when you put these contracts together, that your money immediately has to go into an escrow account. All of the guarantee money has to go into an escrow account. That changed everything for how teams are going to operate in free agency. So when you see teams not spending money, it makes me wonder, partly it's their philosophy, but is it also the money aspect? Are these teams not spending money because they're not flush with hundreds of millions of dollars to put into an escrow account? I couldn't imagine that. The owner of Ford, the billionaires that they are, I couldn't imagine that they don't have the money to do that. But it does beg the question, right? If they're not spending money in free agency, then what is the real reason? Is it just the philosophy, or is there a component here that says, hey, we're not flush with cash? So here's what New England did, which on the face, it doesn't look that exciting, but bringing in a bona fide offensive lineman in Vera Tucker, great move. Romeo Dobbs, crapshoot. He's got to stay healthy, but when he's healthy, he's a damn good receiver. And then Draymond Jones on the defensive line, another really good pickup. And then Kevin Byard to a 1-year, $9 million deal. That's kind of a steal. But he's also been kind of up and down throughout his career. And if I'm not mistaken, he's a little bit older. Where is he? He's 32 years old. So all of those things matter, right? He's on the outside of his career. So they didn't do like a crazy amount of work, but they did bring in a few pieces and they filled a few holes. Whereas the other teams at the top of the board, not including the Dolphins, and to a lesser extent, the Bills, the Titans, the Raiders, and the Commanders completely crushed it. And they went in and they secured multiple positions with multiple free agents, double and triple dipping, into each position. It's time to wake up. Last one I'm going to go through here is Carolina. And we'll continue to monitor these, as we go. We'll break down a few each day. So they bring in Kenny Pickett, John Mechie, David Moore, Stone Forsythe, Rasheed Walker, which what a crazy low amount for Rasheed Walker. That tells you how undervalued he was in this free agency period. They brought in a center, Luke Fortner, edge, Jalen Phillips to a massive deal. Linebacker, Devin Lloyd to a good deal. Linebacker, Isaiah Simmons. Cornerback, Akalib Evans. Safety, Nick Scott. Long snapper, J.J. Jansen. So they didn't like go out and secure a bunch of, high price guys. They did with, a couple of guys, but they kind of did the same thing that the guys at the top of the list did. They got 2 receivers. They got 2 tackles plus a center. They got 2 linebackers plus an edge. That's 3 positions of need. 3 levels, I should say, of need. On the offense, they've got first and third level. And on the defense, they got the second and third level. So they've done things very, very similar to what everybody else is doing. So kind of an interesting process when you go in and look at these, and then you kind of look at your team. What did we do, right? What have the Lions done? And how does that compare? My biggest question for you would be, if the Lions went out and spent that kind of money, does that even make a difference for you? Because I'm sure if they did, that people are still going to say that they didn't make the right moves. They bring in Teddy Bridgewater. I'm not excited about that, but I do believe he brings a lot of value from an intelligence factor, from the coach, perspective. I get it, right? Isaiah Pacheco, I think that's a very sneaky deal. Undervalued, and that's what Brad Holmes does. He brings in depreciated assets and these cost-controlled, assets as well that, you can add to your team on the cheap and expect that in free agency, those are the types of players you're going to bring in to fill some holes for the next year. And then you're going to resort to the draft to plug in your starters, hopefully. Tyler Conklin, that's another sneaky little deal. I mean, that dude is all Dan Campbell. His energy is insane. Cade Mays, we've talked about it. I still think it's open camp competition at center. Larry Borum, I know a lot of people were not extremely excited about this signing, but there's more underneath it. One sec. I'm trying to pull up Larry Borum real quick. So his pass blocking grade last year was 50th out of 89, which, I mean, it's not overly terrible. And I guess I got to sign in. Come on. Last season, he had 5 penalties. He allowed 2 sacks, 3 hits, 15 total pressures on 664 snaps. So it wasn't a terrible year for him. But you also have to consider the fact that he was playing in Miami, right? And in Miami, I mean, that team was just decimated. Not only from a talent perspective, but I mean, from a coaching perspective. But injuries, I mean, everything that was involved with that squad last year was just tough to watch. So if you go back a season or two, where does he rank? Where does he stack up? Well, 2024, I'm not impressed. But again, in 2024 with Chicago, it was just an absolute nightmare of a situation. They didn't have an offensive line at all. Caleb Williams took like the most sacks that season, partially his fault, because he ran around everywhere, but that offensive line was trash. The year before, that offensive line was trash. The year before that, he had good grades. He actually played pretty well in 2022. So if you go back to 22, is that the Larry Borum that we're going to get? That is playing on a pretty good offensive line as it is already, even though a lot of new faces. I'd have to go back to 2022's film and see exactly what Larry Borum was doing and what players that team had at that time in Chicago. Juice Scruggs brought him in on a trade. So a lot of people are saying, well, come on, like, did we really bring in Juice Scruggs? Look, this was a throw-in. The Lions wanted a 4th and a 7, right? Or they wanted a 5th round pick or something. But it wasn't until the Texans jumped in that the value went up a little bit. So they sweetened the pot, knowing that they, were going to do some things in free agency by throwing in Juice Scruggs. Now, we may find out later that Brad was looking for that he was looking for a player to add to the offensive line. But the way I understood it was that was kind of a throw-in to make the deal happen. Whatever it ends up being, you got the dude for free. You signed, like, I don't think the people really understand what kind of a masterclass this is. You brought in a depreciated asset in David Montgomery in 2023 in free agency. You signed him to a 2-year extension at the right time. I believe it was a 2-year extension at the right time because you kept that value low of his contract. And then he went out and proved himself. And then what did you do with him last year? So now it all makes sense. The Lions, in my opinion, were probably already thinking that, next year we're already planning on a, cap casualty in David Montgomery. They extended him. They knew that it probably wasn't going to work anyway, but they did it to save money. And they did it so that he had more value with a low contract. So they get to 2026, and not only did you bring him in on the cheap, you just got 2 picks and a player for him. I don't think people realize how rare that is for a second string, even though he's a first string type player, a second string running back for the last couple of seasons behind Jahmyr Gibbs, or next to Jahmyr Gibbs, however you want to put it, and you just locked in a 4th, a 7th, and a player? Guys, that's great moves. We bring back Izien, and then we bring in Christian Izien. Now, I don't know why they don't have the rest of this updated, NFL. Like, you're terrible. Why is this not updated? You don't have Roger McCreary in here. You don't have all the moves in here. But Christian Izien, now, I talked about him the other day. I'll briefly touch on him again real quick. But Roger McCreary is the one that I want to talk about as to why I am floored at what I learned digging into him, because I never really paid attention to, Roger McCreary on the field. You heard his name often, enough that, it was in the back of your mind. But Christian Izien, in my opinion, is doing a few things in Detroit. Number one, I think that he is that box safety or that nickel corner, immediately can come in and press for a job. But I'll explain in a minute why Roger McCreary also is going to, but this is an insurance policy, is exactly what it is, and exactly what I mentioned that the Lions needed to do this offseason. You remember when I did that video about, I believe it was Jalen Hawkins, right? No, it was Antonio Johnson. And I said that the trade that makes the most sense is bringing in that insurance policy for Kirby Joseph. Well, that's kind of what this is. And he can play in the box. He can play, deep if he needed to, but I see him being more up, towards the line of scrimmage right now. We'll see what happens during training camp. But when he entered the NFL, it was an undrafted free agent out of Rutgers in 2023. So that doesn't scream, a very good football player to, a lot of people feel that way, but there's plenty of undrafted free agents that actually do pretty well. I mean, the Lions have brought in a couple almost every year. But he forced his way onto the roster, and the only reason why he didn't play much the last couple of seasons, or last season really, wasn't because he doesn't have the requisite ability. It's because Tampa Bay invested some second-round picks into the DB room. And they also invested quite a bit of money into, what's his name? Antoine Winfield. So he was playing, at a high level in his rookie year. He had 17 games, 65 tackles, 1 forced fumble, and then he had 2 interceptions that season, which he also went to the playoffs that year, lost to the Lions in the divisional round. He intercepted Jared Goff that year, I believe, right? In 2024, they drafted Tyke Smith. So that immediately was going to push Izien into a versatile super sub package type of a role. So he operated primarily at safety due to, one, secondary injuries. He was kind of forced to go back. And he secured 10 starts, career-high 75 tackles, and allowed a 76.9 passer rating against when targeted, which is really solid. Solid numbers. Given the fact of the players that he was going up against that year, those are solid numbers. And then in week 2 against Detroit, in 2024, he gave up a 57.1 completion rate, 0 touchdowns, and intercepted Jared Goff. So it was 24 that he intercepted Jared Goff. 2025, that's where they brought in Jacob Parrish and Benjamin Morrison. And then that obviously restructured the entire depth chart, because now you've invested second-round picks. And Tampa clearly plays the game where they're going to start their second-round picks. They want them to play. Maybe they battled it out in camp. I'm not sure. But they moved Smith to strong safety alongside Antoine Winfield Jr. And Parrish won the starting job, at least that's what was reported, outright. And I'm not so sure on that. When I watch Izien in the film, I really felt like he's a much better football player than what's being led on to believe. So he was kind of boxed out, right? The 2 safety positions and the slot corner role were all secured by high-priced veteran and Antoine Winfield and 2 second-round picks. That is the only reason why he wasn't playing as much as he should have been. Okay, so now you got low mileage on the guy and another depreciated asset, and Brad Holmes brings him in. And this dude, I'm telling you, he's tough, he's quick, he's a heady football player, and he just flies around the field. He's going to immediately replace that Amik Robertson hole that was left behind from him leaving in free agency. And after evaluating the 2024 tape, I didn't look at last year, I looked at 24. I think he consistently, I know he consistently stays in phase. He presents a very intriguing athletic combination of size. He has the mass to play strong safety, and then he has the foot speed, the quickness to play slot corner. And I really believe that he gives your coordinators an opportunity to disguise what you're doing, especially if we start to rotate coverages a little bit late, into the snap. You're rotating, you're showing one thing, and then you're going to do something totally different after the snap. I'm hoping that Kelvin Shepherd gets there this year with changing a few things. I think this defense is going to change quite a bit, honestly. And then there's Roger McCreary. Let me get Roger. I started writing some things on Roger. I'll print it today. I'll publish it today. But I wrote 2 things. One of them is very long. One of them is a little bit tighter. Pull this down here. First and foremost, looks like Trace is in the chat. Good morning. Or was. Or maybe not. Someone said good morning. I thought maybe she was in there. Looks like we got some other new people in the chat. We got Bates, Nor Lifestyle, Zachary Cleary, Mark Lewis, and anybody else I missed. All good morning to you this morning. All right, so McCreary, very interesting choice of addition here. I had no idea that his arm length was so short. He certainly doesn't play like it to a degree, but when he entered the NFL in 2022, which, think about that for a moment. This is a guy that is supposed to be getting his second contract, and it should be a much bigger contract than what it is. Why is it not? Right? Why is it not? So he entered as a 35th pick overall in 22. He was heavily criticized for a lack of catch point length, which you guys know I drive on that all the time. 28 and 7/8 inch arms. When I look at corners, the floor starts at 30 and a half for me. That's the floor. I prefer 31 and up. You don't need 33-inch arms to play corner, right? But wide receiver and corner alike, I prefer to have at least a little bit longer arm. It has to be north of 30 for sure. But 28 and 7/8. So call it 29. And before I go on, interesting conversation last night, too, with the guys. Apparently, there's some contested measurements between the Senior Bowls and the Combines. That there's been some measurements, I guess, over the many years that are not correct. And teams are finding out later at pro days or visits that those numbers are not right. They're either the tape measures off or whatever. Well, like I told DC last night, I said, well, it's probably just, the Ravens staff are the one doing the measurements. They're trying to depreciate the assets before they get into the draft, just trying to be funny. But be that as it may, if there's a lot of missed opportunity because measurements are off, that is why teams bring these players in too. They want to verify. Check and verify. So anyway, he forces himself onto the field with the Tennessee Titans, into the primary roster based on his on-field production, just like Christian Izien. As a rookie, he really shattered the developmental curve. He started 17 games, and he led the secondary with 84 tackles. Now, whenever your DBs are leading in tackles, that's not a great thing. That means, running backs are getting through the second, first and second level more often than you want them to be. Or you're getting passed on quite a bit, and you're having to make tackles. But either way, 85 tackles, 84 tackles. He gave up or had a signature moment in Week 15 of that season against the Chargers where he had elite awareness on this one play. He jumped out of bounds to tip a Justin Herbert pass back inbounds to his teammate for an interception. Smart. Then in 2023, he transitioned full-time to starting nickel. So now what I see is competition at nickel. You've got Christian Izien and you have Roger McCreary. And either one of them can moonlight, but at a different position. Izien can walk back into that strong safety position. So as a starting nickel, he produced 86 tackles, 2 sacks, and became one of the league's most consistent slot defenders. Now, again, this is why I'm saying I've heard that this contract is going to be in that $6 to $7 million range. I don't know if they've published it yet. I don't think they have. I'm going to look right now. But at $6 to $7 million, I mean, I guess I would not be surprised. I would be really surprised if it was a lot less than that. I don't see anything. I guess let me know in the chat if you see something. So again, this is exactly what Brad Holmes does, right? You bring in the depreciated assets, and he brings in a defensive back whose market was artificially suppressed, really, by a mid-year trade. So he's with Tennessee. He gets traded to the Rams before the trade deadline last year, and then the Rams let him test the market. Now, the way I get it or understand it is the Rams did not really want him to go, but they didn't really have a choice given the salary cap issues that they were facing. I mean, right now the Rams only have $26 million in cap space, and based on where they're picking, you can probably erase about $11 million of that. So they're operating with about $15 million. That's not a lot of money to get through the season for an emergency, and or consider the fact that you still need to sign a few players. So the discrepancy comes here, when he has short arms. He's 5'11", he's 192 pounds. He's definitely that slot stabilizer, working down, as a nickel. He has the density to trigger downhill in the run game. He has the physicality, to mirror receivers in man coverage. And I think his film, at least the little bit that I've watched so far, it kind of showcased him rotating between boundary and slot. So he's versatile, which confirms Brad the villain versatility. That's what they love. It's what they want. So it's the exact flexibility that really directs another insurance policy for the Lions this year, when defensive back has been a position that has just been obliterated last season. And even in years past, I mean, corners tend to get injured, a lot more frequently than other positions. Now, in Shepard's blitz-heavy mechanics, if you will, I think that this is where McCreary can cover the game a little bit more effectively, maybe, than an Amik Robertson. He's a short tackler, but even with the short arms, he wins by staying in phase, right? He wins by elite pursuit angles. He wins by having an elite intelligence in diagnosing the route concepts before the snap, and then staying, mirrored post snap to be able to make the play. The short arms, he has a very slim margin of failure allowable to be able to break up the pass. But by staying sticky, that is how McCreary wins. So this transaction, for McCreary to come to Detroit, obviously it's part of the same acquisition model, and the Rams are operating with very tight financial margins, this spring. So they had to let him test the market. So now this allows a 4-year rookie contract to expire with LA. And now we get a 26-year-old vet on the open market. And like I said, I think that this is going to be that cost-controlled $6 to $7 million range contract. When it comes out, we'll find out what it is. But if that's what it is, it's a great deal. That's a great deal. Even though he doesn't have the requisite size that I love, I'd say after evaluating the tape, he verified a lot of the things that I was looking for, even though I don't agree with Brad in the short arm syndrome that he tends to like. He loves football players, right? And he loves players that play the game to a high level. And that's what McCreary does. That's what Aiden does. That's what some of the other players do on our roster that don't meet the requisite height, weight, and speed, right? Brad said that's not what he's going to do. I'm not going to draft those guys because of height, weight, and speed. I'm not going to bring them in free agency because of height, weight, and speed. Look at DJ Reed. He's short. Terrion Arnold's about the only, guy that we have in the secondary that meets all of those specific measurables. And so far, it hasn't transferred onto the field 100% yet. But he's a player that I believe is heavy-handed. He's compact. He's heavy-handed. He's compact. He excels in run support. He's willing to go up there and slam that box shut. And he's, a spatial tactician. He's highly, highly aware of what's around him. So securing him on a 1-year deal, this is just textbook roster management. It's a great move by Detroit. So then we're going to talk a minute about Kirby Joseph, because this is where the rubber has to meet the road for me. Like, Kirby Joseph has to be able to play this year and play to a high level if we're expecting, I forgot I changed everything on my computer today. If we are expecting for this team to compete for a Super Bowl this year, Kirby's got to play. And I'm worried about that. I get that Kirby is saying that, he wants to be the comeback player of the year, and, he feels like he's going to shock the world, and like, that's all great. It's all fun to get everybody pumped up and feeling great about it. But the reality is, cartilage doesn't regrow. As we learned from Dr. Trollha, there's, specific things that you can do to help strengthen, isolating the specific muscle fibers around the injury to make it tighter, stronger. Even went, and talked about angles of the muscle. Like, that's just craziness to me. The Lions have to do something. And I think it's going to be the draft. I am not, even though I want to see Caden Proctor at 17, I would not be shocked one bit if that player is Dylan Thieneman or Emmanuel McNeil-Warren, or hell, if Caleb Downs slips to 17 because of his medical red flags. I don't know if Brad can pass up on any one of those guys. And again, I'm not even out on the fact that Brad's not going to move all the way up to the 6th round pick, or the 6th pick, or the 5th pick, where he'll have a shot at Sonny Styles or Bailey or somebody. So I think Brad's going to do something nuts in the draft. I hope he does, because I would love to be right about that. But as we get closer to April, which we're getting there, we're only about 5-6 weeks away now. Once we get into April, that's when I will start to formulate my final opinions on where we're going. We got some pro days to watch this week, and I think that is going to help us identify these players, that if you still have questions on them, their final measurements and testing and what's going to come out of these should help us understand a little bit more. Yeah, so Robbie says, I don't expect Kirby to play more than 3 games. Our first round pick will be a DB or a linebacker. Second round pick, linebacker, DB. Branch won't be back until week 6 at the earliest. So we'll agree to disagree. With Roger McCreary and Christian Izien in the fold, Izien can play strong safety. McCreary can play nickel. That's where McCreary plays. So those 2 spots are locked down. Now you have to deal with hold on. This is a doctor calling me. Okay. Sorry about that. I had to take that. So where I was at is you have strong safety that's covered. You have nickel that's covered. So then it's Kirby, right? It's that free safety position that we don't necessarily have covered right now. So I really don't think that the Lions, we brought in Izien, so Terry and Arnold's covered. You've got DJ Reed, who should be fine. So I think all of our starters are in play. Brian Branch, he could be back week 1. So he was injured in December, I believe. And I think it was December. So you're looking at a 9-month recovery at the bare minimum, typically. September would be pushing it. But let's just say, let's go with your idea, week 6. So if it's week 6, you're talking mid-October. So we need to deal with a strong safety for 6 weeks, not named Brian Branch. And then when Branch gets back, it's probably going to be a couple more weeks of rehab and all that good stuff. So, or not rehab, but, getting on the field and getting your feet back underneath you. So it could be 8 weeks before Branch is, playing to a high level. And he could surprise us still. He could make training camp and he could be good to go. But let's just say he's not. Well, Christian Izien, I think, is going to take that strong safety position. And with God, who else is on the depth chart right now? I know we have Whiteside and Thomas Harper. Didn't we bring back Thomas Harper? I'm almost positive we brought back Thomas Harper. Maybe not yet. I could have sworn I saw it. Okay, so let's say we get Thomas Harper back. Well, then there you go. There's your free safety. And Christian Izien could also be a free safety. But then we have Dan Jackson, from last year. And I'm not saying I want to rest on Dan Jackson, but unfortunately, I think that this draft is, I think it's going to be a large part of defense, just like you say, or would agree with. I just don't see him going DBs back to back, first and second round, because you're going to get a big opportunity at DBs later into the third, fourth, and fifth round, where there's going to be some really good depth. There's going to be some really good depth at the edge position into the second, third, and fourth round. But primarily that second round, that's probably going to be your edge pickup right there in the second round. You're going to get a great player at that spot. And maybe the Lions move up. Maybe they move back into the bottom of the 40s or the top of the 30s, which would be a huge pickup. If they can somehow negotiate 3 picks in the top 50, we're swimming fine. But I would say that you could get Zakia Wheatley in the 4th round. That's a huge pickup. You could end up getting, a handful of corners in the 4th or the 3rd round that are going to be really good. And those players are that option for Brad is always on the table to move into the 3rd round. It's not that difficult. As long as you have a team that's willing, it's not like it's that costly to move into the 3rd round. The Lions would have to go from, potentially 118, or like I've been saying, I'm not out on the fact on Brad trading future draft capital. We just seen him do it with Isaac Tesla, and that was one of the first times I've ever seen him do a move like that with a mid pick, 3rd round pick. So I wouldn't be afraid or even doubtful that Brad's not going to give up some future draft capital in this draft. If he really wants to compete and help this team get to the next level, And then again, we don't know what we don't know. Like, we don't know if Kirby's good. You know, he was walking around fine. He was walking around at the gym. But again, it's not football, right? You're not putting the pressure on it. You're not making contact. He might come back and surprise us all. And so if Kirby is good to go, then I think with the acquisitions that we've already made, Brian Branch, he's already backed up with Christian Izien and to a lesser extent, Rock Ya-Sin or even Roger McCreary. You know, to put him out there in that robber role, you know, that I think that, you know, we've got plenty of ability to do that. And I think that this is where the zone comes back into play this year. I think that the Lions are going to operate from zone a lot more. And that relaxes the defense to a degree over top. And you don't need as gifted of athletes to play in a zone scheme, whereas man, you know as well as I do, you have to be on that hip and stay right in phase. Otherwise, you're just going to get torched. But if you're in zone, you're keeping everything in front of you. You just need players that can come up and recognize the route concept, break, and make a play on the ball or make a play on the player. And I think that we have some players to do that. However, I would love to see us go deep on you know, safety and DB. I would love to see it. But I think early, yeah, we could have one pick, maybe round 1, round 2, and then later, I think 5th round, 4th round, you're probably going to see another DB come off the board. It just all depends on what they do during free agency still and what they feel is valuable for them in this draft. But that's why we still need a few more weeks, or at least 2 more weeks, to kind of see what the rest of this board is going to look like. The depth chart, is going to look like before we head into the draft. But I will say this, if he did that, Robbie, if he did that, oh my God, the fans would melt. The fans would melt down. You know that. They would go nuts. They would go nuts. Oh, I see J-Rod's in the chat now. J-Rod, send in some messages. My hands are up. Send in some messages. So people can see it's not me. Hey, start sending in some messages under the J-Rod account. You do that? Hurry up. Send them in. I don't want to be under arrest for very much longer here. No, the J-Rod account. Hurry up. There you go. There's one. Come on, we're on a 5-second delay. We need more than one. Come on, my arms are getting tired, dude. J-Rod, hello. Nightbot's even beating you. All right, I'm done playing this game. There you go. There you go. There it is. All right. You must not remember the conversation. Just send in messages. My hands are up so that people can see it's not my effing account, man. Grow up, people. Grow up. Okay, so that was it on Roger McCreary, really. Don't really have a ton more to add. I mean, outside that I think he's an interesting prospect, or he was coming out of college. It's an interesting pickup when now we've seen for a few seasons that Brad has taken players that don't meet the requisite prototypical size. That does burn me a little bit because I hate being right when it comes to that stuff. I said about DJ Reed that I would never take a short corner They got to be at least 5'11". Have to. I think it's minimum. And if you're shorter, you have to have really long arms. That does happen. So if you have shorter arms and you're shorter, well, your wingspan is junk, your APE score is junk, then it's pretty tough to compete. Going up against the bigger receivers, the DK Metcalfs of the world, you can't compete with that. Going up against the bigger tight ends, how are you going to compete with that? Sure, you can make the tackle, you can slow them up, you can trip them up, or if you're really savvy, you're able to break on the route and jump in front of the football. But if you got to body these guys up, you're going to lose. So I would rather see some bigger guys brought in. There was plenty of options in free agency. So, yeah, I'm holding Brad Holmes accountable on bringing in the smaller stature guys. That doesn't mean that Roger McCreary is not going to have an extremely good season or an okay season or an average season. Hopefully not a bad season. But I would rather see the bigger guys. There's plenty of them out there that are a lot bigger than that. We'll see where it goes. Pro days this week. Tomorrow, there's South Carolina. Let me pull up the full list. Where are we at? March 16. Right? 16, right? Okay. So today is Abilene Christian, Syracuse, and Washington. Tomorrow is Northwestern, Oregon, South Carolina, Virginia. So Oregon is going to be one to pay attention to. How does Sadiq finish crushing it, right? March 18th, you have Central Michigan. No, this is all barring weather, too. There's crazy weather going on. East Texas, A&M, Georgia. So there's a big one to watch on Wednesday. Minnesota, Ole Miss, Penn State, Stanford, all on Wednesday. Thursday, California, Michigan State, North Dakota State, Stephen F. Austin, Western Michigan, and Utah. So for the Utah Utes, you're going to be looking at players. Got too many windows open. One sec. Anyway, so for the Utah Utes, you're going to have Spencer Fano. We know that one. It's a big name to watch. Georgia, you've got Monroe Freeling. Obviously, Kenyon Sadiq. Olivai Vega-Lone for Penn State. Who else is coming up? Emmanuel Pregnan, Christian Miller, Caleb Lomu. Ooh, I think South Carolina has... Was it South Carolina that has theirs today or tomorrow? I mean... Oh, that was Virginia. That was Virginia. Where's South Carolina? Maybe they already had theirs. Maybe not. But for South Carolina, though, I really want to see what Brandon Cisse does and how he tests. That's tomorrow. It is tomorrow. I think South Carolina is tomorrow. So Brandon Cisse or Cisse, he's 6 foot, 189 pounds. Some people still think he's going to be a first-round pick. I don't see it. I really don't see it. But he tested really well at the combine, and I think the teams are still trying to figure out where exactly is he going to line up. But also you got Dylan Thieneman with Oregon on Tuesday tomorrow, so that's another one. Toledo, I'm not sure when Toledo's is, but man, Toledo is not that far away. March 23rd. There's a lot of them on March 23rd. You got Alabama State, Boston College, Bowling Green, Duke, Iowa, LSU, Miami, New Mexico, Northern Iowa, North Carolina, Rhode Island, SMU, and then Southeastern Louisiana and Toledo. So Toledo on March 23rd. What day is that? Is that Monday? It's Tuesday. No, it is Monday. That would be one I would love to go to, honestly. It's only a few hours from the house. So there's a lot of players this week that are going to make their name and figure, we'll be able to figure out a little bit more about them. Got to sign in again. We'll be able to figure out a little bit more about them when we get their final testing and measurements from their pro day, for those that did not test at the combine. Or even some that were not even invited to the combine, right? Check my notes here. Let's talk Malcolm Rodriguez for a moment. So, we look at the linebacker room, speaking in terms of what's going on with free agency, right? And how does this all fit right now? Let me get the Lions pulled up. Here's your final list according to Spotrac. Cade Mays, Larry Borum, Rock Ya-Sin, Christian Izien, Tom Kennedy, Tyler Conklin, Isaiah Pacheco, Teddy B, Malcolm Rodriguez, Trevor Nowaski, and Roger McCreary. Now, more than half of these contracts are not known. Conklin, Pacheco, Bridgewater, Rodriguez, Nowaski, and McCreary. We don't know what those contracts are yet. But for the linebacker room specifically, right now you have Malcolm Rodriguez, Trevor Nowaski, Jack Campbell, and Derek Barnes. And I think that those two glaring holes, one, just to fill, right, to have at least your 6 that you're going to carry on your 53, those are massive, because you can't tell me that the Nowaski and or Rodriguez are starting at the will linebacker spot. I know that Rodriguez right now is going to be penciled in at the will, and he's been there for a little bit. But that's not a player that I feel comfortable with, going into the season to give us a ton of snaps and to be able to, really do a great job against the tight ends and the running backs, because they're gonna test them. They're going to test Malcolm Rodriguez if he is our starting linebacker, but I'm not planning on it. So the question is, what's out there? Who's available right now? I want to talk about that when I get back. I'm going to take a brief 30-second timeout. I'll be right back.
Throwing middle, caught inside the 5. Jahmyr Gibbs to the end zone. Touchdown, Detroit Lions. 14 yards on the strike. Goff to Gibbs. You can't cover that man one-on-one. You just can't do it.
Nice job.
Jared takes the snap, back looking, throwing middle. Got Amon-Ra inside the 2, to the 1, to the end zone. Touchdown, Detroit Lions. Amon-Ra, St. Brown. Amon-Ra, St. Brown.
Nice job.
Mariota's got it back. Pressure comes. He's hit. Slips out of it. Rolling to his right. Now he's going down. Brian Branch got him. Sack for the Lions. Snap taken by Mariota. Wants to throw it. Gonna get hit. Gonna get sacked.
Yes,
Take it down.
sir.
Brian Branch got him second time today.
Nice job.
Hands it to Gibbs. Running.
Pressured by Hutchinson. He goes down again.
Okay. So just taking a look at, the squad, right? Taking a look at who the Lions brought in and those glaring holes and then what's available right now. So if I were to take a look at the linebacker position on Spotrac, unfortunately they don't list, outside linebackers, so you kind of have to look up each one just to, if you can't remember where they play, which I can't remember every player. This is who you have left. Bobby Okereke, Bobby Wagner. Let me just get this down by age. Levante David, Bobby Wagner, Eric Kendricks, Preston Smith, Neville Hewitt, Shaq Thompson, Landon Roberts, Troy Reeder, Deion Jones, Zach Cunningham still available, I guess. I thought he got picked up. Jalen Reeves-Maben, Matt Milano, Anthony Walker Jr., Chris Board, another former Lion, Ezekiel Turner, Jermaine Pratt, Josh Woods, Logan Wilson, Chad Surratt, Jerome Baker, Michael Walker, Devin White, and others. Question is, who's available for the Lions, and are they still working on a deal? I mean, the pre-free agency information said that they were looking at linebackers, and who knows if it came and went, if it's already passed them over because they did not want to spend this kind of money, it is possible. I would be concerned that they're expecting to be able to get some players in the draft that can really make a big difference. And I really don't believe that those players are going to be there in the 4th and 5th round. So, yeah, it's either you go all in, you make a move to the top of the board, and you get the next linebacker of the future. And I'm telling you right now, if the Lions did that, if they went up and they grabbed Sonny Styles or Arvell Reese or even David Bailey, like, you just totally changed this defense. Yep, it's a rookie, and they're going to have a learning curve just like everybody else. But that is an instant upgrade at any one of those positions. Now, it was said yesterday, and I haven't seen it, but some of these players have already communicated kind of where they would like to play positional-wise. So that could dictate, which team takes them. But again, I don't have that information in front of me. I just heard the rumor that they've already kind of told teams like where they want to be. I just haven't followed up with it yet to see exactly where those players now are they going to be selected early. Is the team going to have to trade up to get them simply because they may not be a total fit for some of the teams in the top, 3, 4, 5 picks? It's kind of hard to say that, right? That they wouldn't be a fit, but there is that possibility that they may not be a fit schematic wise if they're saying that they want to be, at a certain position. Well, let's just go by market value now. I don't care about the age. Let's go by market value. We'll start at the top. Do any of these players even make a whole lot of sense for the Lions? Okay, how about Akeem Davis Gaither? He's been pretty light, according to Spot Track, with injuries. Statistically, he's last season played 68% of the snaps, had 100 tackles, 1 fumble, 1 forced fumble, 1 interception. 100 tackles, that's damn good. But it also depends on how bad your defense is. Started 13 games last year. I do not know much about this player, so I'm going to do a quick search on him. So what I see is his snaps are more inside linebacker. And it would appear that the Cardinals run a little bit more of that 3-4. Now, can you convert an inside 3-4 linebacker to an outside will linebacker? Possibly. But I wouldn't say that it is. I wouldn't say that it is likely. So we'll move on from Gaither. Moving down the list. The Cowboys, they ran a 3-4 defense, so I wouldn't say that makes a lot of sense. With, was that Murray, Kenneth Murray? Now, the Bills, they also run a 3-4 base defense, so unless you're bringing in Matt Milano to be more of that inside backer, let me see what his snaps have been. So Milano does project more as an outside linebacker, way he was utilized in Buffalo. Doesn't appear that he's had a significant amount of injuries as of late. He had a bicep injury in 2024, a leg injury in 23. So clearly his availability has been diminished, which would probably give credence as to why he's not signed by a team right now. It's not the screen that I want. He's been in the league a long time, man. He's up there in age. 9 years, 30, will be 31 this year. I don't see it happening. Amin Bamigia, or whatever, however you pronounce his name. The Bears definitely run that 4-3, and that's what he was playing in last year. check out his injuries. He had a shoulder injury last year, so he was definitely not utilized as much. He's not a sack guy. Market value says 2.2 mil. So I mean that's a cheap deal to bring in, a body to compete. But they're comparing him to Chris Board or Ezekiel Turner, Otis Reese, and Aaron Mosby. If you're just comparing that for contract purposes, okay. Statistical comparisons, they're doing the same thing. His snap load has been extremely light. So that's probably not a good idea. Need someone that's on the field. See, this free agency period has just been fickle, man. There's just not a whole lot out there. Now, what's going on with Jack Sanborn? Why is he not signed yet? Again, they run a 3-4 defense. So he only played in 6 games last year. So he missed quite a bit of time last season. But prior to that, he played in damn near every game. So he missed the last half of the year last year due to a groin injury. His market value is 2.1. Remember him coming out. I want to say, didn't he play for Stanford? Well, no, Wisconsin. It says right here, Wisconsin. I thought he played for Stanford. Now, he's primary inside middle based on his snap count. At least what I see. I mean, that could be a decent backup for Jack, right? Have 2 Jacks in the middle. So there's just not a whole lot available. So, all right, we got about 23, 27 minutes to go. Let me see what's going on in the chat. So, Cruisin says Max stays in Vegas. 100% he is. Fuzzy something says, let me get out of this screen. Fuzzy something says instead of $30 million to Max, which would be more than that because he wants a new contract, from what I understand. You sign Jack, probably Gibbs, draft a tight end at 128, probably. And honestly, if it's Max Clare, even way before that, I'm good with that. I would love to see Max Clare in Detroit. Yeah, if his talking about Jack's or the other dude, Amino, if his comp is Zeke Turner, I will pass. Yes, me too, man. Zeke Turner, I don't want to see him back in Detroit. They brought him back twice. I'm not big on Milano, man. The age, maybe not a direct fit, but the age. John Desage, is that a statement about Jack and Gibbs, or is that a fact? I'm expecting both those guys to get 5th-year options, and I was expecting it to be done. Probably around the draft time. You know how the Lions do, man. They like to dominate the headlines when there's no dominating the headlines, and I think that they do that stuff on purpose. I haven't seen anything about those guys getting their 5ths yet. But I'll say this. If it doesn't get done before the draft, I would expect that they do it on day 1. right? That they'll release it on day 1, and then they'll release the other one on day 2. And I think the reason why they do that stuff is quite simply to dominate the headlines, to throw everybody off their trail as to what they're going to do in the draft. They've already made their decision about what they're doing in the draft. It'll change on draft day when the board changes. But there's no doubt in my mind that those guys will not get their 5th-year options. There's no doubt at all. Jack and Gibbs will both get it. I've heard the rumors that people are still peddling this Max Crosby stuff. Again, it's the same idiots that out there that's all they talk about is edge. And I use the term idiots loosely because I think it's idiotic to continue to peddle the same content over and over and over and over again. Can you do anything different? Can you talk about anything else? Is there anything remotely intelligent to talk about outside of Max Crosby or any other edge player? I was looking for something this morning. I was trying to find the audio that I have. So the week before Max was getting traded and when all that stuff was going down, people were saying that Lions offered 2 first-round picks and Terry and Arnold, yada, yada, yada. Well, I have direct audio from an executive in the NFL, former executive, where he made a definitive statement and said that the Lions have never been in on Max Crosby. Never. The team never was named. They named every single team that has been in on it, and the Lions were never mentioned once. And I'm going to find that audio. I have it somewhere, and I'll try to play it for you tomorrow if I have it. That's all you need to know. It's all you need to know is that it's never been a thing. And I get it. Some people will say, well, everyone's a liar. No one really knows. Well, if no one really knows and if everyone's a liar, then why you print stuff or why we make content about it? And then to a lesser extent, I've heard that, people that work at the NFL Network work for the NFL. Well, newsflash, they work for ESPN. They don't work for the NFL. They work for ESPN. So consider that. NFL Network is just the name of a network. See what Tim Twentyman's talking about today. You know who we haven't heard yet? We didn't listen to Izien's press conference, have we? I don't think we did. Let's do that. Be right back.
Throwing middle, caught inside the 5. Jahmyr Gibbs to the end zone. Touchdown, Detroit Lions. 14 yards on the strike. Goff to Gibbs. You can't cover that man one-on-one. You just can't do it.
Nice job.
Jared takes the snap, back looking, throwing middle. Got Amon-Ra inside the 2, to the 1, to the end zone. Touchdown, Detroit Lions. Amon-Ra, St. Brown. Amon-Ra, St. Brown.
Nice job.
Mariota's got it back. Pressure comes. He's hit. Slips out of it. Rolling to his right. Now he's going down. Brian Branch got him. Sack for the Lions. Snap taken by Mariota. Wants to throw it. Gonna get hit. Gonna get sacked.
Yes,
Take it down. Brian Branch got him second time today.
Nice job.
Hands it to Gibbs, running right, runs through a tackle, gets down to the 10, Gibbs to the 5, still fighting down to the 2, down to the 1, to the end zone! Yes. Touchdown, Detroit Lions! He did not quit!
Nice job.
Off to throw again, does, middle, J-Mo angling to the end zone, touchdown Detroit Lions! J-Mo flips into the end zone for 6.
Nice job. You talking about gut punch up the middle, then talking about tossing it on the edge, and once you get him out on the edge, Sonic is gone.
Inside the 20, inside the 10, inside the 5, touchdown Detroit Lions, 44 yards. Jahmyr Gibbs putting together a day.
Hat trick. Nice job.
There's your victory formation. Kyle Allen will take the snap, take a knee, and that'll do it. Two teams will meet out in the middle of the field to say job well done, job better done on this day by your Detroit Lions. As for just the second time since 1939 they have come on the road and beaten Washington, they do it today by a score of 44-22. Big bounce back for this football team, coming off an effort they were not happy with.
Nice job.
Congratulations. Thank you. Bring you.
Played on the substitutions.
Coming out a lot tonight. Gotta get familiar with my faces. Yeah, gotta get familiar.
Well, welcome first off.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Just curious, when talking with Detroit and other teams, how much was your versatility kind of part of the conversation there, and how much do you think that has helped you in this process?
Yeah, I mean, speaking with the majority of the teams that I spoke with, or basically all of them, the versatility was always brought up. I know how much that's valued in this league. Only 53 guys can dress, so having the ability to play multiple positions out there is always an addition to a team. There's always going to be something teams look for.
This was your first trip into free agency. What were you looking for? What did you want to get out of it?
I was looking for a home, somewhere I felt comfortable coming in every day playing football. A coaching staff that believed in me. That was important. Just having transparency with the coaching staff and the everyday days and in and out days of what goes on to a game plan and things like that. A city that loves football, and I believe I found all of that in Detroit.
Explain maybe a little bit about the coaching staff believing in you. What did Dan say? What did you hear from this organization that told you that they had a
Yeah, just from when I got on the phone with him, my first conversation with him was that was a heck of a football player. And playing Detroit these last 3 years, 4 times in 3 years, it's almost become like a division game. So just, having the ability to go against these guys and knowing what type of outfit they are and how they're going to bring energy every time we play against them, that was something that I definitely took into account, when choosing Detroit.
Maybe any sort of vision for how they see deploying you on the field?
Not just yet. Again, versatility was always a big thing. So having the ability to play multiple positions, I'm pretty sure I'll find a role.
Going back to Rutgers, you could just see you lined up all over the field. I'm just curious, what's your favorite spot on the football field?
The football field, being on it. Yeah, just being on the football field, that's honestly my favorite spot. Teams do, a lot of things schematically to find ways to move me around a lot. So just being on the field, for sure.
Talked to Isaiah Pacheco yesterday. What can you tell us about him as a teammate and a guy?
I didn't see all of his interview or all of it, but That's who he is. Like he's 100% every time. Since the day I met him, we came in the same class. So a guy with a huge story, but you would never know from all the energy he brings. He's like how he is yesterday. That's how he is every day. So you can expect that from him.
You come from a winning program in Tampa. What do you think that you learned over there that you can bring to here to help the Lions continue to push forward in the playoffs?
Yeah. I think just being myself. I think being myself, being a communicator, being a good teammate, being a good person, but also having that grit, that dog mentality. And I think that's something that's already here, and I'm just here to add to it.
What was your first impression of the conversation with Shep and just being able to work with him now and just maybe how he sees that defense running and your fit within it?
Yeah, that was probably the realest conversation I had with a coach since I've been in the league, even interviews prior to the league. So that was a really good conversation. We had some really good talks about, how they plan on using me and different things like that.
What about that conversation made it so real?
Just his transparency, and that was something I was looking for in the free agency market. Coaches to be transparent, and he's just a real guy. You know what I'm saying? That's what the players reciprocate to that. So.
Use you everywhere, or do you say want you a slot or safety? Or
He didn't say. No.
You were involved in a pretty intense camp battle last year. Led to maybe a smaller role than you would have wanted. But how do you feel like last year maybe enhances the urgency to prove that you are who you believe you are?
Yeah. Last year, a lot of things didn't go the way I thought it would or the way I wanted it to. I kind of put that in the past, use it as fuel for, motivation for this year coming up. Again, I do see myself as a starter in this league, and I said that last year, and I'll say it again. So just having the ability to come out here and compete.
You played these guys. You picked off Jared. What else about that game stands out to you?
As I told a lot of my peers after that game, that was probably the most intense game that I've played in my career, and it still stands to this day. Going against the Lions is always that environment, but just being in Ford Field and having those fans behind them and behind me now, it's always just a crazy environment, and us being able to pull that win out, that was big. It was big for me and for the Bucs at the time. Yeah.
About the pick.
What I remember about it,
Got to pause it here, man. Leave it up to the Lions to have some audio all screwed up. I'll never understand it.
in cover 3, I was a buzz safety, and I was ready to jump another route, but I seen Levante hit his arm or something, and the ball literally just fell into my hands. I got it still, yeah. I got all of them, yeah.
Beyond the versatility, Christian, what do you think is your best attribute on the field?
I'm a leader. I think I'm a communicator. That's something I pride myself on. Football's hard. It's an 11-man sport, and you're not always going to be in the best call, that you want to be in, or to go against the offense that you're going against. So just having guys and being able to communicate with you and having somebody out there that you trust being out there with, and that's something I want to be for this team.
One of the things they tried to implement here under Shepard last year was having, more fluidity with the players calling the defense and adjusting the defense.
Yeah.
It seemed like a lot for the guys to take in, but as they adjusted to it, it seemed to be more player-driven. The communication skills, does that appeal to you, that ability to kind of modify calls on the fly to what you're seeing?
Yeah, as needed. I'm not going to go out there and just make up calls, but no, as needed. If coach wants to check, made to a certain look, then I'm going to make sure it's my responsibility, to make sure I get us in the right call. Have 11 guys playing fast and flying to the football.
Have any other teammates reached out to you?
Teammates. No, not just yet. Pacheco. I seen Pacheco yesterday when I first got here, so that's always exciting to see him. But no, not just yet. I spoke to Barnes. He congratulated me. I trained with him, but not just yet. Just those two.
Same thing. I was just going to ask if you had any previous relationship with Brian Branch or Kirby Joseph, just from NFL circles.
No, I haven't. No, not at all. Playing against them, a heck of a players. Just watching those guys. I watch those guys on film. I try to take little things from their game, but no personal relationships just yet. No.
How much was evaluating the defense and the personnel part of the decision too? Look at guys like Hutch, right? All pro, Campbell, all pro, Kirby,
yeah.
Brian that Dave just talked about. How much was that part of the decision? How much are you looking forward to joining the unit?
It was a big decision, and I think that's a product of the coaching. Those guys are tremendous athletes and tremendous players, but I think that's a great product of what great coaching attributes to. And again, that's something I want to be a part of. Going forward, just good coaching, and I think great coaches lead to great players. So,
Seemed like you played really well as a rookie when you played
Sorry, right here.
Yeah.
When you played mostly in the slot as a rookie, seemed like maybe that was your best season to date, at least production-wise. What about playing that spot on the field do you feel like suits your game the most?
Anytime I think I'm close to the football or, close to the line of scrimmage, I can have an impact, whether that's blitzing, covering, playing zone, playing man. Being close to the football is always, a plus, for somebody like me. I'm not the biggest guy on the field. I know that. So I got to find ways to be effective, using my speed, using my athleticism to be able to affect the game.
Being undrafted to being a big-time contributor, how has that shaped you and your mindset, your perspective, and all those things?
Coming from high school, I was a December offer to Rutgers. So I was probably one of the last people to get an offer to Rutgers. I remember the day I got it, and probably 2 games left in the season. So since I've been there and going from, high school to being the last commit in college, and then going from competing with a 5th-year senior in college and going through all of that, become a 4-year starter, had the career I did at Rutgers, and then going from an undrafted player, no combine invite. I've been through just about everything that a player can be told that he couldn't do. So just being here today, I'm a product of that.
Free agency, is that part of it? I mean, was there another people telling you couldn't do something, or last year, is that the next iteration of that,
I mean, since I've been playing, I've been always, I always haven't been the biggest guy. So because I've been playing in high school, I'm from New York. I played ball in New York, frowned upon. Went to Jersey, stood out, and then came back to New York to finish high school. So, I've been told no a lot of times, and I've worked through it. So, just having the ability to, believe in myself, that's the most important attribute for me.
I asked Larry Barton this yesterday. This is the first year players could have Zoom calls during free agency with the teams. Did you have any of those? And how did that? Okay.
No.
I don't know if that played. What other teams were you considering in free agency?
I was considering a handful. I left it honestly to my agent. I just, I asked him. I told him I want the best opportunity for me, as a player, but also, I want to win. That's something I pride myself in. We don't do all of this hard work to, go places not to win. So, definitely.
You were around some really great veterans in the secondary in Tampa, and Jamel and Carlton Davis and Antoine. I'm just curious what kind of impact they've had in shaping your young career.
Yeah. From the moment I stepped into the league, I've been watching Antoine since college. We had the same college coach. He was at Minnesota and he came to Rutgers my senior year. So I've been watching him since college, and I played the nickel my senior year. So I watched a lot of his film. He's been great, helping, little things on the field. We're similar in build, so he, helps me find ways to, affect the game and be just be a menace on the field. And other guys like Dean, super smart vet, teaching guys how to take care of their body. Carlton helping off the field stuff. Just all of those guys have different effects. So.
You talked to CD at all before?
I just seen CD a couple days ago. Yeah. It was funny. We were talking about it before I even decided to come here. But he was telling me about Detroit and all the good things. So. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate it.
I love it. I guess I didn't get a chance to watch this yet, so this was really good for me too, to get now a little bit more perspective. I wrote my article a couple of days ago on the research that I did, and now looking back at what I wrote, I think I painted a pretty good picture of who Christian Izien is, and man, he just painted an even brighter one. Couple of people in the chat were saying, man, he looks nervous. And probably, anytime you jump up in front of people, I know the first time I ever got on the mic, I was nervous. The 50th time I got on the mic, I was nervous. Now, I don't care, right? I'm not as nervous. Not nervous at all. But anytime you do something for the first time, you're in a new room, new surroundings, you have no idea what these, reporters are about to ask you. That's nerve-wracking. But I think he handled it extremely well. And I think that there's something that I will always definitively go to when we talk about players in how their processing speed. So when I talk about processing speed from a player, it's how do they see, read, react, and break, right? Especially for a DB. You have to see it. You have to read what's going on. You have to pay attention to what's going on with all the players. and then your guy that you're about to cover, and the quarterback out of the corner of your eye. You got to watch the snap. You got to watch the drop, watch the quarterback set, and at the same time, you're still fixated on, the guy that you have to cover. And it's kind of funny because a lot of DBs that I've spoken to in the past have said that, they're kind of hovering in space. Like, that's what they say it feels like, that they use their spatial awareness. You know how if you were to shut off all the lights in your house and it's pitch black, you probably know how to get around your house, right? Why? Because you've taken that same road, that same path numerous times. But go into a different home and do that, you're going to bump right into the wall, or a light or trip over something. For guys that play the DB position, it's the same. It's the same route, right? They're, whether they're breaking off, a 10 yards, 10 yard and in, or a stick route, or a comeback. Like, if they can see it happening, if they can see what the route is, and they've diagnosed it, they know their steps, they know where they need to be. So when I say they're hovering in space, it's almost like they're not even looking at the receiver or the quarterback to a degree. They're kind of feeling and watching both at the same time. It's kind of hard to explain. It's almost like blackout moment. Like you do what you're supposed to do, but you're kind of blacked out. But you do it, and you get through it. You don't know how. So what I just learned from him is a lot. I thought his first statement was great. What position do you want to be? Where do you see yourself fitting? And I forget the whole question there, but it was, what position do you see yourself best on the field? And he just said, I just want to be on the field. I just want to play football. I just want to be on the field. That's one of the best answers I've heard in a long time. Versatility was talked about. I talked about versatility this morning with Christian Izien, and how I feel like he is able to play the safety position as well as the nickel position. And he just validated that. Matter of fact, he mentioned a play on Jared Goff where he says, number one, that was the most intense game that he's ever played, and he was the buzz safety on that play in cover 3, which the Lions will run a little cover 3 too. So I feel like that fits exactly what I'm thinking for this cat, that he's going to be able to drop back and play safety if needed, come in and play safety if needed, or he'll be up on the line of scrimmage where I feel like he does his dirtiest work. I mean, from the limited amount of film that I've watched on him already, I think he's great in and around the line of scrimmage, and he is your direct Amik Robertson replacement right now. I mean, very well spoken. Seems like a very cool, calm, collected dude. He's young. Talked about the versatility. Talked about his intangibles, and his best intangibles he mentioned a few times. He's a communicator and he's a leader. And I love that. The fact that you can lead, but the communication on the field is the most important thing you're going to get out of a DB. Talked about Calvin Shepard's meeting for a moment, where he said that it was the realest conversation that he's ever had with a coach to date. And the number one buzzword, is transparency. So, Christian, you and I see eye to eye, because transparency is key to everything in life. Transparent with your husband, your wife, your kids, whatever it is, you need to be transparent, right? That's the way I operate, wide open. And it sounds like that's something that he values, is the transparency. And so when Shep is going to give him the business and be transparent and say, you know what, I don't like this about your game. I don't like this about this rep. And I want to see you do it better. I want to see you do this instead. He's going to be transparent with him. He's going to tell him when he's making mistakes, and he's also going to tell him when he's doing things great. You got to break him down to build him up. He also was talking about, last year, how it didn't go as planned. I also mentioned that in my article. They brought in a couple of, second round picks. They also repaid Antoine Winfield, a large amount of money. So he was kind of boxed out a little bit. And then he mentions that he wants to be a starter in this league, and he feels that he's a starter in this league. And at the end of the day, he just wants to compete. The next best thing that I took out of this and I have a few more notes, is one of the last things that he said. When he was asked about where he wanted to go in free agency and which teams, he was interested in. One, I'm glad that he doesn't mention the teams. A lot of players won't, and they shouldn't. There's no need to. But he mentions that he just wanted to win. That wherever he goes, he wants a chance to win. And you know what that tells me? It tells me that is a player that is less concerned about the money. I mean, they all want the money. But he just wants to win. That's all he wants to do. That's why Christian Izien is in Detroit. Because he wants to win. He has the winning mentality. And he has that drive to go and win. And whenever you start off your day with wanting to win, man, everything starts to get a lot easier. So he's a perfect fit for us so far. I hope it all translates to the field. I expect it to. Anytime that you're told no, often, depending on the situation, you better stop. I think you know what I'm talking about. But whenever you're told no, that should drive you to do more. I've been told no a lot. I've been told no a lot in this space. And I keep driving for more. And I have never seen in my time, I mean, there was a period last year when I did that viral video on what's his name? Oh my God. That's going to bother me. Hold on. His name should be on the tip of my tongue, but I'm having a brain fart right now. Roger. Good old Roger. The viral video on Roger Goodell, after a couple of Lions games went really bad with officiating, and we felt we had, some games stolen from us. And that video's still doing views. It's nuts. They still get like a few hundred views at least every month. But that moment, I grew 2,500 subscribers in a matter of a couple of days. Like it was probably born out of a week, but it was quick. And since then, the season ends and you slow down a little bit. But right now, everything that I'm doing is growing at a larger volume. And that's because I have great moderators. I have a great teammate with Eric. And I have great support behind me with Megan and my kids. So the product that you get out from what the energy you put in. And right now we're trying to put out good energy and positivity. And have great conversations about our team, not negativity. There's no need for it. You can still have a franchise that loses and still find ways to be positive. But I was told that I would never grow. I was told that I would never have more than, 2,500 subscribers. I was, told all these things. Well, you keep putting out good energy and good energy comes back. Now I'm collaborating with dozens of people on a magazine, and those are all great things to feel, confident about, but also, man, I'm humbled, right? To even be included in the conversation. And that's a lot of that is your fault that I'm doing these things. It's your fault for showing up every day. It's your fault for liking and sharing and subscribing. It's your fault. And I appreciate you for that. Everything that I've done is your fault. You have to show up for me to even stay relevant in this space. One of the other things that I really liked about what he said was he was asked, kind of about the other players on the team, the Kirbys, the Bryans, and the All Pros and Jack and Aiden, and he mentioned the coaches first. Like, hey, those are all great athletes, great football players, but they are a product of great coaching. And he's right. Like, you can be the best athlete in the world, but if you're not coached how to do it right, you're probably not going to do it right. And I think that the Lions have a great group of coaches, starting with Dan all the way down. They have a great group of coaches. So he's stepping into an environment that fosters competition, that fosters the mentality of winning and doing everything at a high level. And I think that he fits that mold perfectly. In closing on this, he was mentioning that, playing in the slot, playing up close to the line of scrimmage, that's where he feels he does his best work. And he mentions, I was not one of the biggest guys. I'm not one of the biggest guys, but I have to use my other abilities, the speed and the athleticism. And again, that's a player that is finding ways to win. So good stuff by Christian Izien. I think this is a great pickup by Brad Holmes, man. Like I know a lot of people get down and out on all that stuff, but you can't ignore the fact that Brad is bringing in, and Dan obviously are bringing in players that can help this team win. Help this team win. Oh, yeah, I hear you, Attila, and everybody else. It does get annoying. It really does. It's really annoying. But it is what it is. You're going to have the good with the bad and everything that we do in life, and I just choose to be positive. I promised Robbie I would open up the lines, so Robbie, let me just check real quick. Make sure that this thing is actually set up. I haven't done it in a little bit here. All right, you should be good now. Go ahead, Robbie. Looking at some of the other press conferences, I think we've gotten through them all. Robbie, what's happening, man? Oh, hold on. Oh, you got to call back. Somehow you flipped to my phone, and I don't know how. Call back. I think I pressed the wrong button. Man, like I was saying, I think we've gotten to everybody now. We've done Cade, we've done Izien, we've done Pacheco. I haven't seen one pop up for McCreary yet. We've done Borum. So I think we got everybody in. Call back. Robbie, hurry up. Must have to lay some extra line to go from here to Canada, I guess. All right, Robbie, what's happening, man?
How you doing? Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, I got you now. I somehow diverted it to my phone and yeah, wasn't good. So what's happening? How are you doing?
I'm doing all right, I guess, I suppose. I mean, it's tough out there. It's a tough crowd out there. You got a lot of Lions fans being misguided with misinformation, and all of a sudden that's the end-all be-all for every situation. And it's very diluted and sad state to live in.
Oh yeah, it's better
minded and closed that you can't expand beyond what you're being force fed.
It's better than the alternative, I guess. At least we're on the right side of the ground. I mean, it's.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I'd rather be alive and dealing with the BS than the alternative. So I guess every day is a good day. But yeah, it gets old, man. It really gets old. And for a time there, I think that it was slowly draining on me, as you guys all probably witnessed. It was slowly draining on me because I just, at some point you've got to talk about it, and you've got to try to get rid of it as best as you can, but you'll never be able to get rid of it. You'll never be able to cleanse the negativity from what everybody else is bringing into the space. Unfortunately, we just have to get more eyes on the positivity. So anyway, you wanted to chat today. What's on your mind so far? I mean, I guess free agency, future, draft. What is it?
I personally don't. With free agency, I don't think we're doing a whole lot until after the draft. We've seen this year after year to where once the hot names disappear in free agency, then we see kind of like a slow rollover until after the draft, and then those FA players that everybody thinks should go before the draft end up going like hotcakes after the draft, because teams want to see who falls to them at where, so that they can fill the holes with younger players versus bringing in these veteran players. These veteran players are extremely valuable. They offer a great deal of experience to the younger players, but you don't want to pay, let's say, a DN $40 million when a high potential DN falls down to the draft due to character issues or an possible injury concern, and then he falls into your lap. You're able to grab somebody that you weren't expecting to grab.
Yeah, can you do me hey Rock, can you do me a favor? I don't know if you're moving around or moving your phone, but if you could try to keep it stable.
Yeah. Sorry, I pace.
Yeah, it's just breaking in and out, and I don't know if you're on earbuds or what, but the volume dips down.
I can fix that. There we go.
Yeah, the earbuds don't really work because there's too much noise.
So what I was saying is those vets usually get picked up. They're not high quality veterans. They're not the low end bargain shopping veterans. They're just solid quality players that usually get picked up after the draft once teams see what they're able to pick up in the draft.
There you go.
So I think with Brad Holmes is going to stay a little quieter until after the draft, and then you're just going to see people getting signed really quick to 1-year contracts, maybe 2-year contracts, but I don't expect us to go beyond 2 years with anybody that's left in FA to get picked up right now.
Yeah, I would agree. And so I think a good exercise that I try to do, and I should probably pay more attention to this because I don't think I did it last year. I started doing it about a week ago when we started talking about free agency, when it first kicked off on Monday, and not a whole lot was happening, and everyone was saying, well, we're just not doing anything. And I said, well, wait a second here. Why don't you go back and look what we did last year? Why don't you go back and look what we did the year before? And it was like a couple on day 1, a couple on day 2, like 1 on day 3, 1 on day 4. And then it was nothing, right? For a while, kind of to your point. But I just went back to 2024. And so I guess my conversation with you this morning, I guess I would like to just walk through this for a moment. If we look at 2024's free agency, I think it did something for us that we have not done yet, which is you grabbed an all-pro. And that was Kevin Zeitler. Well, we don't have that yet this year in free agency. So we grabbed Kevin Zeitler. We grabbed DJ Reader. Graham Glasgow came back. Donovan Peoples-Jones. Zonovan Knight. Marcus Davenport. Amik Robertson. Dan Skipper. Khalil Dorsey. Scott Daly. Brock Wright. Kendall Vildor. Craig Reynolds. Coyote Owasika. James Houston, Nate Sudfeld. That was our free agency of 2024. And out of all of those names, you had one All-Pro. You had a DJ Reader that was coming off of 2 major thigh injuries in opposite years, but you didn't know what he was going to be. And I think that was like a $10 million or $15 million deal or whatever that was. No, I'm sorry. It was 2 years at $28 million. So that was a pretty good deal. It was 2 years at $28 million. And then Graham Glasgow. I mean, that was a low end budget deal, but it was still $9.5 million guaranteed on a 3-year, $20 million deal to come in and play guard and center. To me, that's like your. I mean, you could look at the Cade Mays deal from that sense. We paid Cade Mays only $5 million more to replace Graham Glasgow and add this, and the center position, center and guard. So that's a really good deal by Brad Holmes. So that's a 1-for-1 and a big time upgrade over Graham Glasgow. Donovan Peoples-Jones, that was a waste of a pickup. Zonovan Knight didn't turn out, ended up getting injured. Marcus Davenport, he didn't turn out, but he only signed a very, very low deal, low risk. Amik Robertson was probably the third best pickup out of that free agency period after Kevin Zeitler, DJ Reader, and then Amik Robertson. And then we brought players back like Dan Skipper, Khalil Dorsey, Scott Daly, Brock Wright, Kendall Vildor, which Brock Wright, I believe we ended up fighting for that contract with the 49ers. And that was a 3-year, $12 million deal. So far this year, when you look at the quality of players that we brought in versus 2024, yeah, we don't have an all-pro. We don't have a DJ Reader. And we don't have, or we do have our Amik Robertson. We do have a Roger, McCreary. And we do have Cade Mays. So are we better than 24? Did we replace all those players with 3 players that are better outside of Kevin Zeitler? What is your thoughts?
My thoughts is if you go back and you look at what we did in 2023 and 2024 pre-draft, as far as FA signings, you're going to see a very similar pattern as in 2025 and this year in 2026.
Yeah, but I'm saying specifically to 2024, though. How do you compare it to this year?
This year, I see it the exact same. We didn't pick up an all-pro because we don't need to pay out that kind of money, nor can we afford to pay out that kind of money.
Right.
We got Cade Mays on a very team-friendly deal. Now, keep in mind, he's a little unproven. I don't know how much of the Panthers you watched last year, but I watched 3 games. And from the 3 games that I watch, on top of the highlights that they show on Red Zone, the Panthers were a fundamental run-first team. They exploited the run, and then they leaned off the run to the pass once the box got a little heavier. And that was a credit to them. That was due to their success at running the ball. Now, while running the ball, they ran up the middle probably 60% of the time. And Cade Mays was their center. So the run blocking grade he got from PFF, I kind of look at, he's not a splashy name. He's not a big name. So he's not going to get his due credit unless they're actually specifically watching that O-line and watching him and highlighting his performance. I think they gave him a very unfair grade. He is a mauler in the middle. He rarely loses his one-on-one while run blocking. As far as his pass blocking ability, he's a big dude and he can anchor. He's got very heavy hands. Dudes have to go around him. They can't go through him. So as far as a pass blocker, I think Jared Goff got a very stable individual in front of him, to where Graham Glasgow was a little less stable.
So I went back to 2023. I got to text J-Rod real quick. Want him to call in after you because I see there's BS in the chat. I just want to make sure he has a chance to call in. I know he says he's sick, but even 10 seconds will do just fine. So going back to 23, so we bring in CJ Gardner-Johnson, and I think on the face of it, everyone thought that was just some crazy good signing. He didn't even last past week 2, and he was injured, and when he came back, it wasn't good. And on the sidelines, I had a viral video from sitting in my section 105, and I'm watching Kirby Joseph and CJ Gardner go at it. I mean, they were hot, and I recorded it from my phone, and then I posted it up on YouTube later. And I'm thinking, man, this dude's not even playing, right? And he's on the sideline causing drama, and for whatever reason. And he was kind of like that virus, you know. He's an edgy guy, and I get it. I mean, teams bring him in to bring the edge, but it was not a great signing. That was one of those signings where you kind of question the culture pick. But we brought in David Montgomery in that trade, or in that free agency period, excuse me. We brought in Cam Sutton. We know how that all worked out. That didn't work out, and he wasn't even that great. And that was a $33 million deal, which hopefully we're still going to get that $10 million back. I haven't heard anything. Emmanuel Mosley didn't work out. But after David Montgomery and C.J. Gardner, like if you would say that those are the two biggest names that we pulled in 2023, and we went to the NFC Championship game. After those two, like I said, Cam Sutton didn't really work out, was not that great of a corner. Emmanuel Mosley, tore his ACL again. Isaiah Buggs ended up getting benched at some point, I thought that year, or maybe that was the next year. Marvin Jones ended up retiring, I think, during the season. Alex Anzalone was re-signed. Matt Nelson was re-signed. Kaminsky was re-signed. Glasgow was brought in. In 24, that was a re-sign. Jalen Reeves-Maben was a re-sign. Craig Reynolds was a re-sign. Will Harris was a re-sign. C.J. Moore was a 2-year deal. That was not a re-sign. Nate Sudfeld was, I don't think that was a re-sign at that point. He might have been brought in there for the first time. And then Michael Badgley was brought in. And Jake McQuaid, the long snapper. So a whole bunch of nothing in 2023 after C.J. Gardner and David Montgomery. Now, David Montgomery clearly was the winner of that free agency period. But I would say that when you look at our free agency right now, it's way better than 23. It's kind of hard to argue against David Montgomery, but right now I'm looking at Cade Mays and David Montgomery probably balancing each other out from a snap load, perspective, and then the value of having a guard center that can play, starting, day one. And I do agree, by the way, that he is, a question mark right now because what I was saying the other day. But yeah, 23 was not exciting. Like there was no names on this list that really did a whole lot. I mean, Kaminsky had an average year for a rotational defensive end. Matt Nelson, I don't even know if he made the roster. He probably made the practice squad. Craig Reynolds never really sees the light of day. Will Harris was terrible. C.J. Moore was terrible. Nate Sudfeld, well, we all know Nate Sudfeld. So yeah, 23 was a kind of a bust free agency too. How the hell did we make it to the NFC Championship?
I think we made it to the NFC Championship off continuity and chemistry and coaching development, coaching motivation. Those players on that roster will literally bleed for Dan Campbell.
Yeah,
you listen to Isaiah Pacheco talk in his interview. That man is amped to play for Dan Campbell. I never heard him talk about Andy Reid like that.
Yeah, well, I can't say that I've ever even heard Isaiah Pacheco talk before.
Never heard him talk at all. But to be completely frank, like if the man wanted to talk, he has a voice. He's extremely energetic.
Yeah, and
I think
I think that we heard from Christian Izien too said the same thing, that's who Pacheco is. Like that's just who the guy is day in and day out. He's all energy all the time.
I think if the only thing I would give a knock on Pacheco is maybe his ego. Now, he seemed a little egotistical, but that was more on his motivation to kind of get out on the field, put in some work, and prove himself.
Oh, absolutely.
Whereas C.J. Gardner-Johnson, his ego was formulated based off what he thought he played like versus the way he does play like.
Sure.
And I think that was a very big chip on his shoulder that he just couldn't carry. I also think the first 3.5 years of his career, he was known as kind of like a big hitter over the middle. And he's had a few concussions, so it might be possible he's got a little bit of Antonio Brown going on. And we may very well hear Unfortunately, some news about him in the future along the lines of what Antonio Brown's going through right now. But if that be the case, then I can sympathize with the way he was acting out with us, with other teams. It's just not a good culture fit. Once you go through that certain level of concussion protocol, you just start losing grip on reality.
So let's wind back to 2022, and before I do that, I guess I will throw this out there. I asked you how we made it to the championship game, NFC Championship game in 2023, and you felt it was continuity. I feel
chemistry.
Yep,
and coach motivation.
Yep, and I feel it was the 2023 NFL draft that brought in what all should be all pros by now. But Jack Campbell, who had a decent rookie year, could have been better, but I think he played extremely well, even with Anzalone in the middle there, swapping out time on the field. Then Anzalone moved to the will linebacker position to give him more time on the field. Brian Branch was stellar. First game, picked off Patrick Mahomes, ran it back for a touchdown. And, Jahmyr Gibbs, even though it took him about 5 games to get going, ended up being an amazing move. And then Sam Laporta had one of the best rookie seasons of a tight end until Brock Bowers shattered it. So I think that's why they made it to the Super Bowl. And the reason why, or the NFC Championship game, and the reason why I say that is because the Seahawks made it to the Super Bowl because of how they drafted in the last 2 years. It wasn't free agency outside of Sam Darnold, which, okay, even if they didn't pick him up in free agency and they would have signed him maybe 2 years before that, they probably still would have went. The point that I'm trying to make is that draft is in those 2 drafts before the Super that year and the year before for Seattle. Those were the players that got him there. And I see the same thing for the Lions. And so when you look at this year's draft, we have an amazing core of athletes now. Brad can do whatever the heck he wants in this draft to go win a Super Bowl. And yes, you can draft the right players that can take you the distance. It's not like I don't want Brad to be safe in the draft. Everyone wants Brad to be chaotic in free agency. I want him to be safe in free agency, and I want him to go nutty in the draft, because that is where if you pull in a player like an Arvell Reese, a Sonny Styles, or somebody like that you desperately need, right? You desperately, Sonny Styles and Arvell Reese. You desperately need one of them. That type of player on the opposite side of Jack Campbell. Ain't nobody going to run on you. Ain't no tight end going to be able to complete a pass. No running back is going to break through the middle. You just completely shut down every offense in the league if you make a move like that. And that is the move that I want from Brad Holmes. Quit talking about edge. Quit talking about free agency. Go get me the best damn player in the draft. That's what I want. Sorry.
I 100% concur. However, I think Brad Holmes is going to see more value in acquiring an additional pick in the top 50. I can see him trading back from pick 17 and possibly ending up with an earlier second-round pick to complement pick 50.
Yeah, I think that, I'm in the same boat there, too. I've gone both ways on it. But I go both ways on both drafts perspectives for a certain reason. I'll have to admit it. So I never once would lead any of the fan base that listens to this channel to a watering hole that has no water. Like I wouldn't do that. But I have to a certain extent, protect what it is that I'm going to release later. And so my draft work, I am so prideful of it and secretive to a degree because I don't want anyone to know what I'm thinking. And the reason why is because I've hit so high on these drafts that I start putting out my information and people are going to take it. And then they're going to get stuff right. I don't want that to happen. I want to prove to the community that I know what the hell I'm doing. I may not always get everything right, but I'm not going to tell everybody what I'm really thinking I'm going to tell you that, yes, I think that there's a possibility, like I said last night with all 22, that Brad trades back to 23, 24, 25, adds a third round pick. You won't get a second, but you'll get a third. And it is what it is, right? But you need that third round pick. You could then repackage and move up earlier into the second. Or I could see it going the other way. Brad trades the first and the fourth and next year's first, and he moves all the way up to pick 5 or 6. And that could happen. However, with the players that are in 4, 5, and 6, he's going to have to kick in another pick. It's going to be 2 firsts, a fourth, and probably another 5th in 2027. And that's a legit reality, and it's a move that could happen. And there's a couple of teams that may be interested in picks versus that player if those teams are still rebuilding and that one player is just not enough. But they need the picks next year to get the quarterbacks that they need, or, the quarterback, receiver, or offensive lineman that they need, because next year's draft is loaded with some left tackles. It is loaded with quarterbacks, and it is going to be a much better draft than this year is. From what I understand, Raw, teams are trying to stack picks in 27 for that reason. They're trying to get rid of their picks this year because this draft falls off in a hurry. Anyway, continue.
Yeah, you just said a lot there. Well,
you don't have to respond to it. Just say whatever it is that you want to talk about.
No, I want to respond to it because you brought up some very key points. One, you're not on trial with me. I love your show. I almost gave up as a Lions fan content watcher last year. I had one show I watched all the time because I agreed with a lot of the things he said, and everything he said, he followed through with facts and proof.
Yeah.
And 100% on board with it. And I still watch his show to this day. I have his phone number. We communicate via text. I have your number. We communicate via text.
Mm-hmm.
I watch your show religiously every day because although we don't agree with everything, and that's the beautiful about debating as a fan for your favorite team.
Mm-hmm.
It's not competitive. It's a debate to see where we're going from here. Maybe I open your eyes up to something you didn't think of. Maybe you shine the light on me and show me something that I didn't realize. It's a two-way street. Back in 2023, our team was riddled with injuries. This is why I said we went to the NFC Championship game based off team chemistry, continuity, and coach motivation. Because we were riddled with injuries in 2023. No one thought we'd make it as far as we did. We proved them wrong. We still should have won that game. Everyone blames Kendall Vildor for everything that happened in that game. They don't even realize he was a 5th-string corner playing on Brandon Ayuk, one of the league's young superstars at wide receiver, because of injuries. Not because that was the best matchup for us. We were hurt and depleted at talent. Kendall Vildor gave everything he had on the field. Was he the best player on the field? No. But he was the best player we had available. And he did a tremendous job for what he was able to do. There were things he wasn't able to do, and we got burnt. We still should have won that game. But back to my additional points here. This team is in a very unique situation where Brad Holmes doesn't have to take risks. He doesn't have to do anything because this team is already competitive the way it is. We have a young, stout, tough team that is capable of playing huge in big moments. There are things in this draft class that we need. Unfortunately, like you said, the talent level, there's a very steep drop-off. Back in 2023, Brad Holmes was asked why he took Jack Campbell at pick 18. Didn't he think that was a bit of a reach? Like, the consensus was Jack Campbell's early second-round pick. Jahmyr Gibbs is an early second-round pick. His response to this question was golden. We evaluated the draft class, and we had about 12 to 15 players with first-round grades on them.
Yep.
We were fortunate to get 2 of the players we had a first-round grade on. That was it.
Yeah, and so
this draft class, I think, is much of the same.
Yeah, so
maybe a little smaller.
Yeah, so to Brad's point, every draft is different, and I think it would behoove fans to actually listen to what he says and understand and then vet it. So if Brad says, like he does every year, to a degree, he'll say, last year we only had 12 to 14 first-round draft picks with first-round grades, blue chippers. And maybe the next year it was 14 or 15. And maybe the next year it was 13 or 14. Well, there's a reason why he feels that way. But instead of just trusting what Brad says, trust and verify. That is where you have to go listen to Daniel Jeremiah, Dane Brugler, Lance Zierlein, and then go listen to other teams' GMs. Go listen to their post-draft press conference. What did they say? Were they asked how many first-round rated, players, prospects did they, how many blue chippers did you feel were in this draft in the first round? They often will tell you, I had X amount. Sometimes they'll ask, well, did that player fall in that category? And they're not going to answer that. But Brad definitively said in 2023 that they had a first-round grade on Jack and they had a first-round grade on Jahmyr Gibbs. And so taking Jack at 18 and taking Jahmyr at 12, that was such a roll of the dice by Brad, because I don't know who was saying Jahmyr Gibbs was a second-round pick, but he was gone. Right after 12, he was gone. Someone was taking him. I forget who was right after us, but that team, I don't think it was the Bills, was it?
He was rumored to go to 3 different teams. The Patriots, the Jets, and I believe it was the Bengals.
But either way, it was right after
15 and 17, I believe, were those teams' selections, and that's who they wanted. Each one of those teams wanted him.
Yeah, so after he traded back out of 6, what he gambled on was that Bijan Robinson would potentially go at 6. They didn't want Bijan. They wanted Jahmyr Gibbs. And so if Bijan goes at 6, then that throws the draft off a little bit, because now a player went where they weren't supposed to go. By no means was another team going to take a running back in the next several picks. So you get offensive linemen, edge, quarterbacks, whatever's going to go between there. I can't remember the draft order right now. 12 rolls around, they get their guy. And then
Bijan Robinson was the consensus number 1 running back in the draft class. Everybody knew that.
I don't know who knew that, because I didn't think that.
That's what everybody was saying.
Yeah.
That's what I mean by everybody knew that. Now, if Brad Holmes stayed at 6 and just took his guy, which was Jahmyr Gibbs, and left Bijan Robinson on the board, that would have lit the world on fire.
Yeah, but look how much smarter he would have been, or look how smarter he is now that he did that gamble, and then he picked up the extra picks, and then then he's able to grab the players that he did with Brian Branch and Sam Laporta later, right? So he gambled, big gamble, put his big cojones up on the table and said, I want the guy. I can take him right now. But I have a feeling there's another team that wants Bijan Robinson, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to back out. Arizona Cardinals took Paris Johnson, right? They took Paris Johnson at God, where did he go? 6, right? To Arizona. Wasn't it?
Yes.
And then Bijan went, didn't he, at 7?
Yes, he went to the Falcons at 7. And then I believe the Raiders.
Oh, hold on.
Took somebody
here we go. Hold on.
At 8, and then the Bears took the left tackle at right.
Yeah, so Falcons win at 8. So I got it in front of me now. So Paris Johnson goes 6 to Arizona, who we traded with. What's crazy is I called that exact trade and the pick. in a video before the draft. Tyree Wilson went at 7. Bijan goes at 8. Jalen Carter goes at 9. Darnell Wright goes at 10. Peter Skoronski goes at 11. And then Jahmyr Gibbs goes at 12. And then Brad takes Jack at 18. So I have a feeling, though, and I'll be totally legit with this. Had Christian Gonzalez been there at 18, I don't know that we have Jack. And
I don't know if we do either.
And quite honestly, if Jack's not taken at 18, I don't know if we have Brian Branch.
The real question is if we get Gonzalez at 18, does Jack continue to fall down the board to 34 and we get
that's
Jack Campbell instead of Sam Laporta?
That's what I was kind of just saying is I don't think that we have the same board that we do. I think that we end up losing Brian Branch or, to your point, Sam Laporta, unless he tries to do something to move back up. But yeah, I think that the board then changes. You might see Jack, if Jack was really considered to be a second-round pick, he might fall all the way to the end of the first or early second, but I don't think Brad would have waited. I think that Brad would have moved up again. I think he was that convicted.
This is the one thing that I've noticed. Oh, I just got an update here. Sorry to interrupt you. Justin Fields just got traded to the Chiefs from the deck. He's recovering from a torn ACL right now.
That's crazy.
What I saw last year is teams are being a lot more selective when they're willing to deal with Brad Holmes. I mean, if you look at the trades he's made since he's been in Detroit with his tenure, we traded up for JMO from pick 32. We traded up all the way up to pick 12 to get Jameson Williams. We traded up from pick 54 to 48 to select Brian Branch. We traded back with Jahmyr Gibbs to get Jahmyr Gibbs and Sam Laporta. I think, and last year we traded up to, or not last year, the year before, we traded up to get Tyrion Arnold. I think teams are being a little more conscious of what Brad Holmes is doing because he's been so great at finding these players.
Well, that's why it's going to be difficult for him to move forward. I think when a team gets a phone call from Brad Holmes, they see the 313 and they're like, "Oh shit. What is Brad doing? What does he want? Who does he want?" And they answer the call. Right? It's Brad Holmes. What you thinking there at pick 18? You going to stick? I'd like to get pick 18 from you. What's it going to cost? Who do you want, Brad? Like, what's going on now? You know, I can see how these conversations go. You pancake eating mother. You know, and then he ends up getting his trade. But you're right. Teams that are taking phone calls from Brad right now are then questioning who's on the board. And so they might want to get that call. Why? Because if they're not convicted and you get a call from Brad Holmes, well, maybe now you might want to take a look at that guy that's coming up or the next 3, 4, or 5 guys that are coming up. But here's the curveball. He might grab a player that is 20 picks later on everybody's board. He just wants that player in the first round, or he may want that player early in the second. Why? Because he's not going to wait. You know what Brad doesn't care about? He does not care about positional value as much in the draft. He cares about value in free agency. He cares about depreciated assets in free agency. He does not care about positional value in the draft, because if he did, I don't think that we get Jameson Williams at, what was that, pick 12? I don't think we get him at pick 12 by moving way up the board, because I don't think a lot of teams are going to take him in the first round. And if they were, it wasn't going to be till later. So he doesn't care about positional value.
Williams is a unicorn, in my opinion.
Well, he's going to have to be one this year.
I don't know another wide receiver in the entire league who can take 65 catches and turn it into almost 1,200 yards and 8 TDs. I don't think there's a single wide receiver in the history of the league that has done that much with that little targets. That'd be an interesting fun fact to look at. 67 catches, I believe he had, with 1,160 yards and 8 touchdowns last year. That is incredible for a production standpoint based off target or based off catches.
So let's go back
to... That is why I call him a unicorn.
Yeah, let's go back to 22 for a moment. So you go back to 2022. Lions are building, right? And in free agency, you're still trying to build. We're 2 years into what is a full rebuild all the way down to the mud of this team. They bring in DJ Chark, which was a depreciated asset. The deals were $12 million on a one-year deal. We didn't really have any receivers outside of Amon-Ra St. Brown. And then we bring in Charles Harris, the linebacker. We brought in Khalif Raymond to be our punt return specialist, kick return specialist, and then also a wide receiver.
And we took him from Tennessee, I believe, right?
I think so. Then we brought in Josh Reynolds, former teammate of Jared Goff, and gave him somebody to throw to. Again, a max deal of $12 million. Then Alex Anzalone. Lions announced that Monday that they re-signed Alex from his one-year deal the previous season. Tim Boyle, he comes in on a one-year deal. Evan Brown comes in as our center on a one-year contract. Jalen Elliott, our safety, came in on a one-year deal, I believe. Then Sean Dion Hamilton, I think he ended up retiring that year, but he came in at 26 years old. CJ Morgan, the next year in 23, we brought him back again. Then Garrett Griffin, tight end, come on. Chris Board, who's been hanging around the Lions now for several seasons. Mike Hughes, the corner. David Blau, the quarterback. Gerard Davis, the linebacker, came back for a moonlighting experiment. So, yeah, absolutely nobody in 2022 outside of DJ Chark and, honestly, Khalif ended up being somebody, but not what I wanted him to be. I think that was a good experiment, but I'm not going to bring in a specialist that is highly regarded as a special teamer only. He contributed in the pass game and he made some, amazing plays at times, but I wouldn't waste opportunity on players like that, just like I wouldn't waste a position on a fullback. So absolutely nobody again in 2022 really came into this team outside of Josh Reynolds and DJ Chark.
Josh Reynolds caught a lot more flack than he should have.
Oh, he did. Yes, he did.
I think the expectation on him was put extremely high, much higher than his talent level, and that's not his fault. I wrote a piece in our chat for Voxer, but I was limited to the character, so I wasn't able to post it. And
God, what was that? 10,000 characters?
No, it was somewhere around 500 or so, but it wouldn't let me post it. But I sympathize with the people who say Brad has failed us, and I sympathize with them. And please hear me out for this.
Yeah,
I
sure.
sympathize with them for the general consensus. Maybe they're right. Maybe Brad has failed us in the sense that he has done so much and has turned this team around so good and quickly with drafting and producing a winning culture in Detroit that he's put an expectation on himself from the fans' perspective to continue this great success. And they say he fumbled the bag in 2024 and he fumbled the bag in 2025 because those players haven't been as impactful as the players from 2023 and 2022. Now, I sympathize with their ideology. However, what they're failed to see is the 2024 and the 2025 draft class. That is the peak of COVID for those players in those developmental years. They're just coming out of high school. They're just starting college. That is basically a 2.5 to 3 year time lapse that they are basically suffering with very limited ability to continue to develop in that time frame. So yes, the talent's going to get a little depleted because there was no contact. There was no face-to-face reactions unless you had a mask on. Who can play football in a mask? I've only heard one player who trains with a mask, and that was James Harrison.
Yeah,
he wears that.
He's different.
That Bane mask that he had, and that was insane. He's like, you can't breathe through it, but I did. So, like, and he was working on his conditioning at 44 years old or whatever. But you can't play football in a mask. You can't be in close contact with anybody. So those players in 2024 and 2025 missed a very big gap of the potential of developing in that time frame. Frankly, we've come out of that now, and now these players are still affected by it because they're in grade 11, grade 10, and it definitely impacted their development, but it's not as severe as the last 2 years. I think Brad Holmes probably has 8 to 12 players with a first-round grade on these guys in this draft class, and if he can't get one at 17, or it's just not worth trading up to get one at 14 or 13, if one falls through the cracks for him, then I definitely see him trading back, and probably not in the first round. He's probably trading back a little later into the early second round, mid-second round, and either acquiring future picks or acquiring additional later on picks in this draft class. I see Brad Holmes drafting a lot of players with the very high upside.
Mm-hmm.
Like that linebacker I showed you, Eric Gentry. That guy, just based off his physique, has a very high ceiling to play anywhere on the field.
I'm sorry, who was that?
Eric Gentry. He's
Oh,
the 6'7"
but
linebacker.
before we get into that, so I wanted to go back. Before we go into 2021, I want to go back to 21 real quick. Before you get into any other like free agency stuff or draft stuff. So in 21, we're building a team, right? So we have absolutely nobody. We have over 20% roster churn. I think it was closer to 30% that year. We bring in guys like Romeo Quora. Bring him in after he had a 2020 breakout season. You know, Romeo Quora.
And his brother Julian.
Huh?
And his brother Julian.
Yeah, he was already on the team. So we bring in Romeo for a 3-year, $39 million deal, which didn't work out. We brought in Brashad Perriman, who was injured, I believe, before week 1 on a $3 million deal, on a 1-year deal. We brought in Jamal Williams. He did work out. We brought in Tyrell Williams, who was also injured on a 1-year, $4 million deal, but he was injured, I think, by week 2 or 3 or 4, whatever it was. Alex Anzalone was the first time he stepped foot in Detroit on a 1-year deal. Josh Hill, the tight end, I believe he was on a 1-year deal, and that one didn't work out. Jalen Reeves-Maben sort of worked out. Would not have been my number one guy, but I think he was more of a culture guy than anything, but was not a player that I've ever really cared about. Tim Boyle, that's the first time he stepped foot in Detroit. Charles Harris, the edge rusher, he was a former first-round pick.
Overpaid for him.
And see, he was 26 years old, former first-round pick. I'm not sure on what the numbers were on him, but he was okay. Then Randy Bullock, the kicker, Damian Ratley, the wide receiver. I mean, come on. Don Mulbach, the long snapper. So, again, absolutely nobody in 2021. But the theme is If you go to every single free agency, it's 1 year deal, 1 year deal, 1 year deal, 1 year deal for probably 85% of these guys. And maybe 1 or 2 of these guys are going to get a 2 or 3 year deal. And that's pretty rare for Brad Holmes. The difference is the names that I spoke to this morning, the teams that I spoke to this morning that it spent the most money in the league, the Titans, the Vegas Raiders, spending $300, $289 million, whatever the number is. Yeah, they're inking guys to 3 year 48, 3 year 60, 4 year 112, 4 year 120s. They're inking some big time deals. They'll all be backloaded with zero guarantee by year 3 if they're a 4 year, or zero guarantee by the 3rd year. And those don't always work out. We see it time and time and time and time again. Matter of fact, another team in the NFC North, which I didn't get this far today, but I wanted to go through the NFC North. I'll save it for tomorrow. The Packers. From what I understand, like, their fans are melting down because they're not doing anything in free agency. Well, guess what? I know you know this, Rob, but why are they not signing anybody? Because they just signed Micah Parsons to a massive deal, who's got a busted up, leg now, Achilles or whatever it was, ACL. And they just signed Jordan Love a couple years ago to a $50 million plus year deal. So that's exactly why they're not able to do anything in free agency. So for all the fans out there that think, well, we're just watching Vegas spend $300, we're watching the Titans spend, $300, we're watching, all these, that's because they had the money to do it. They didn't have all these big bloated contracts. They didn't draft very well and have to re-sign their guys. They are starting from scratch. They are building a team. When teams spend that kind of money, they have not drafted well in years. That's the only...
There's a reason why they had to trade Rashawn Gary. It's not because they wanted to. Rashawn Gary's a very good player.
Well, they got rid of Clark the year before.
There's a reason why they had to trade their DN, Wooden, who can also play DN because he's that big. Because they have no money. They have to offload these contracts to make room on their roster for the money they've already spent. So that is the downside. When you're signing a free agent, and even when you're re-signing some of your players, you can't just look at the year that you're in for salary basis and cap situations. You have to take a 2-year projection, because you have to somehow pay them their money, but also you have to account for the following year, or you're going to be in a situation like the Packers, and you have to offload people just to get under the structure of the cap. So what teams do is they'll sign Cade Mays, for example. You can pull up his contract right now. But you'll sign a player like Cade Mays, and you're paying him 3 years, $28 million.
25.
The first year, $25 million. The first year of that contract is typically the cheapest year for the player, because it gives you the most cap relief for the year that you're in, so you can add additional pieces. The second year is usually the second cheapest. However, the second year is almost double what you're paying him in the first year. And then the third year is the cleanup money. Usually that's when a team will decide whether or not it's worth keeping them, or they can cut them and escape with a minimal penalty.
Yeah, so the way I see the Cade Mays
2-year projection.
Yeah, the way I see the Cade Mays thing working out, simply because of the guaranteed money, is they're probably going to give him probably 7, 6, depending on the signing bonus. I don't know what the signing bonus is, but they're probably going to give him, somewhere between 5 and 7 this year, and they'll fully guarantee it. The next year will probably be close to 10 million or whatever the balance is in all the rest of his guaranteed money. In the third year, there will be zero guaranteed money, and it'll be a lower base with some bonus kicked in, and then probably a void year. So if they do it that way, I mean, that's kind of how they've been doing those deals. Is the first year is, a portion, of the guarantee. The second year they clean up, like you said, but it's really the second year they clean up all the rest of that guaranteed money. If it's not a bloated contract, you can do that with a $25 million deal at $14 million guaranteed. You can't do that on a $90 million deal that's over 3 years, like Max Crosby or somebody else. Like that. It's just really hard to do. No matter what, you're paying the piper. On a deal like that. You had mentioned something a few moments ago that the Lions fan base, a portion thereof, thinks that Brad fumbled the bag in 2025 because those draft picks have not hit as hard as what we've done in 2023. Well, for anybody expecting every single draft to have 2023's impact, then you must just started watching the NFL in 2023, because that's not how it works. But I'll say this. Tyleik Williams was a top
stud
12 defensive tackle through about week 8 or 9. And I want to say that his grade was somewhere in the mid to upper 70s. Top 12 as a rookie. And for whatever reason, when they brought Ali McNeil back, he lost a few reps for a week or two, and then they put him right back in. Tyleik Williams was one of the better DTs in the league last year, and even if he finished as a top 20 or a top 25, I don't know the final numbers off the top of my head, that is extremely good for a rookie defensive tackle that is not getting as many snaps as he should have. Now, wait till you see that player this year. Wait till you see a player that had a whole offseason, not coming off a championship run. He had no time in between, going to the combine, and then getting ready for OTAs. He had no time. The first year for a rookie coming off of a championship run especially is the hardest football year of their life. There is zero breaks, and your body needs a break, right? We know that. I mean, the NFL's hard. They can barely go, play 2 games in 11 days. Like it's extremely tough. So anyway, what else you want to finish with?
I to add what you were saying, I see Tyleik Williams basically being a mirror image of what Ali McNeil was in 2024. Despite all the injuries on that D line, he was the single standout for our defense. Teams were triple teaming him, and this man was still breaking through. Like, they couldn't stop him. He was an animal. Pure athleticism and power, and he just knows how to get through an O-line. I imagine Tyleik Williams training with McNeil, and I see those two pushing each other to an unlimited bounds. I think those two are going to become a very dynamic wrecking ball, and O-lines are going to have a lot of trouble stopping one, let alone both of them together.
So I'm looking right now at the final 2025 defensive tackle grades. Let's see where Tyleik is. Oh, come on. They only did the top 20. Yeah, I still think it's crazy. I still think it's crazy that the Jets traded Trevonde Sweat because he was ranked as a top 5 defensive tackle last year.
In addition to a show you did a couple weeks ago, you hit the nail on the head. Brad Holmes structures his contracts in a unique way that most GMs don't do. He has big money coming out sooner for some players and basically a breezement for other players to allow the larger contracts to basically pass through without applying as much financial stress on the team. There's where was I going with this? Oh yeah. So everyone was begging for Jared Goff to be restructured, yourself included. I did not like this idea, and the reason
I'm sorry,
why
say that again.
is
Say that again. I missed it.
everybody is begging for the Lions to restructure Jared Goff.
Yep. Well, he was
Yes,
done.
we
Yes.
needed. Yes, we needed the cap relief. However, the downside to that restructure, and you mentioned it very briefly in a show a couple weeks ago, or last week, is there's an $8 million rollover for the remainder of his contract, and he had 1 or 2 additional void years. Next year, the Lions fans are going to go crazy because we're paying Goff over $60 million again, and they're going to lose their mind. Not only that, but I believe next year, Aiden Hutchinson's contract, actually the money kicks in next year, and you're going to have roughly almost $100 million going to those 2 players alone. Then you have St. Brown, Penei Sewell's deals. You got J-Mo still in the second year of his new contract. So we're going to be in a more financially strapped situation next year, but we have additional players that we have to sign. And that's $8 million that's going to roll over and balloon into next year's money. Could have been used to help re-sign Jack Campbell, Brian Branch, Sam Laporta. And
you may have misunderstood me. So there's no $8 million balloon. The restructure for Jared Goff is they restructured $40 million. I believe they added a void year. I haven't looked yet, but you take $40 million. Yeah, they had to have added a void year. You divide that by 5 years. So what it did is it took the $70 million cap hit and it turned it into a $40 million cap hit this year. Next year, whatever that number was will now add $8 million to it. Does that make sense? So there's not really a balloon. You're just taking the restructure and spreading it out over the next 5 years. So let me actually just pull up his contract for a minute. Keep talking if you want. Let me pull it up.
That's basically what I mean by a balloon payment. You're taking a portion of the money that we're saving this year, in this case, $30 million or $40 million, and you're dividing it up and splitting it up into the remainder years of his deal. But the void year is where I'm confused. I don't know how that plays into the into the mix.
The void year just extends your signing bonus. So when you take, let's just use round numbers. His cap hit was like 69.3 or 69.6. Call it 70. Okay, so you take that's 70, and now you've knocked it down to 30 because you took $40 million off the top. You divide it over the remaining years of the contract. Then you add a void year. So now you're dividing it by 5 years, which means you take that $8 million per year, and now you add it to that base salary that he was already going to have for 2026. So his cap hit, it went from 69.6 down to 37.6.
So what is his contract next year?
60.
Are we paying him 62, 64 million?
It's 62.6. And that's
okay. And that still makes Jared Goff the highest paid quarterback in the league next year.
Maybe. But
and the fans are going to lose their mind over it. A, he's a 1 year older. B, he's still not a mobile quarterback. I'm using sarcasm here. We don't need a mobile quarterback. We need an accurate quarterback, as does every team. So it's like there's always a consequence to restructuring a deal, and the larger the contract, the bigger the consequence is. We still have to re-sign those 3 players, plus add additional talent in free agency next year. And I just don't know how this is going to work out. I know we're going to tag.
Yeah, it's going to work out, Rob, because I don't think you're taking into consideration that, number one, the Lions don't sign big in free agency, so we don't have to worry about that. They spent $32 million this year. Number 2, you have another $30 million plus bump that is going to go to the salary cap next year. So the salary cap will go up to $330 million. And you take all that into consideration, the guys that you're signing, you just said it yourself. When you extend these guys, you pick up the 5th-year option, you extend them. Jack Campbell and Jahmyr Gibbs' contract will not hit until 2028. So 2020.
There is a downside to
so 2020
giving players
so 20
year option.
Hold on. 2028 is when it'll hit. You have to pick up the 5th-year option because that is guaranteed money that they'll be paid in 2027, which is a lot lower than what their contract is going to be. And so then in 2028 it'll hit, and by 2028 you're going to have another $60 to $80 million that is going to get added to the salary cap. By the time we get to 2028, the salary cap is going to be probably $400 million. So
There is a downside to giving players a 5th-year option. The downside is that you're prolonging their deal, which is allowing the market to increase by the next player who's going to reset the market. In this case, we're in competition with Atlanta over Jahmyr Gibbs and Bijan Robinson. Who's going to reset the market? Who's going to get paid what, and who's going to get paid more? I don't think we're in a race so much with the linebacker. I would say probably giving Jack Campbell the 5th-year option is a better idea than Jahmyr Gibbs.
Well, they're both going to get it. That you have to do it. You have to. It would not make any sense to not do it. You would pay more next year than you would by picking up the 5th-year option. If you sign Jahmyr Gibbs to an $80 million contract, instead of paying him $15 million next year, you're going to pay him over $20. Make sense yet? Same thing with Jack Campbell.
No.
If you sign Jack Campbell to a $120 million contract or a $100 million, just look at the deals that have been signed this week. You can pencil Jack Campbell in above all of them for linebackers, and that's going to inflate the number for 2027 if you don't pick up the 5th. So you can restructure the entire deal by picking up the 5th, and then you add the extension to that. So you also add an extra year of control. Otherwise, you're only going to get a 3-year deal or a 4-year deal as opposed to a 4 or a 5-year deal. So by extending it 4 or 5 years, you're actually getting 1 year of control, and you're also spreading the cap hit out. But anyway, enough about that. I was trying to look at the quarterback contracts and salaries here. Yep. Let me just take a look at Dak Prescott here. So his cap number in 2027 is $76 million. His cap hit in 2028 is $86 million. Jared Goff's contract in 2027 is $62 million, and his cap hit in 2028 is $69 million. So Dak Prescott in 2028 is going to make $17 million more than Jared Goff. And in 2027, he's going to make $14 million more than Jared Goff. That's just one example. So Goff's
not going to be the highest paid quarterback, but that $69 million cap hit, we have to pay that out. We cannot restructure that deal.
Yeah, so Jared Goff's not the highest paid quarterback.
That's good news.
Yeah, no, he's not even close to the highest paid quarterback. Like Joe Burrow.
Some of these developers.
Yeah, so Joe Burrow has probably one of the better contracts where he's max money $57 million in 2029, but the difference is he has zero guarantee after 2027 so that the Bengals could walk away from that. And then also with Jared Goff, they have zero guarantee after 2027, so they may not ever see the $62 or the $69 million guarantee if the Lions decide to walk away from Jared Goff after this season. And I'm not saying I want that. I'm just saying it's possible. That's why this deal was put together this way, so that they could weigh their options in next year's draft when that draft is going to be loaded with quarterbacks. We may have a rookie quarterback in 2027 if we don't win a Super Bowl this year.
I can see the Lions looking to do a deal under the table with Jared Goff as a release and then re-sign.
I know Jared Goff wants to win a Super Bowl, and I could see him looking at possibly taking a Tom Brady type of deal to where he's taking it on the lower spectrum to help load the roster with talent to win the big show for Detroit for himself. Because we all know what he's capable of. And although a team's never one piece away, if his deal was significantly, let's just say $15 to $20 million less to what Tom Brady was averagely taking lower than other quarterbacks in his time, then I think that just opens up the door for Detroit to kind of form this dynasty that I think Brad Holmes wants so badly.
Oh, he'll get it. He'll get it. All right, I got to take one more call because I've got to get J-Rod to call in so that we can – apparently there's idiots in other chats that think that I'm J-Rod or J-Rod is me or something like that. So I need to clear that.
Yeah, I had a conversation with him already about that.
So, all right, I got to get to that. Rod, it's always a pleasure, man. You have a good rest of your day. I'm sure we'll see you around tomorrow.
Yes, sir. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Anytime.
And as always, rock on, Detroit Lions.
There we go, brother. We'll see you.
The only real Lions Mafia football show.
Lions Mafia football. All right, buddy. We'll see you. All right, J-Rod, I've got a few minutes left, man. I got to get rolling. I didn't realize what time it was. It's already 11:47. So it's time to go, man. You're up. I think you're calling my phone, J-Rod. You're not calling the podcast. You got to call the podcast number. Now let's see if I can do my best ventriloquy, right? I can be a ventriloquist too. Watch. There we go. Hold on. Watch my mouth. Oh, you hung up, J-Rod. What are you doing? There we go. All right. Thank you for calling Rockhound Detroit Lions. This is J-Rod.
Yep.
J-Rod, tell everybody who
Hey, Will.
Tell everybody who you are, man.
Hey, my name is J-Rod. I'm just a huge fan of yours, Will. Just a huge fan. Your take on the Lions is almost, you're right where I want to be.
You see
I'm sorry I'm not feeling the greatest today. I would not like to stay on the line long. I'm a loyal guy to Will Rock and Eric and rocked on.
There you go. So,
we are separate people.
Yeah, so hold on, buddy. So I just was doing my best ventriloquist act to make sure that they still believe. I switched screens. We the screen flickered. It's really me talking. I'm not really here right now. And that we are the same people. Just kidding. So yeah, J-Rod 313 has always been a separate individual. He's a moderator. He's been part of this channel for a very, very, very long time. And so anybody out there in the other chats that are listening right now, because I know you are, stop the BS, man. Stop, grow up. Like, this isn't high school anymore. And start treating people with respect. So, J-Rod, I appreciate you, man. Is there anything that you want to talk about while you're on? Or I know you're not feeling good, so.
Well, and I just been trying to spread the peace with everybody. You know what? I'm a 53-year-old man, Will. Love the Lions. I watch all the younger guys crash out, and I'm like, you know what? I promised myself I would not do that after Matthew Stafford was traded. I said, nope, I'm not doing that anymore. I crashed out with that guy. So when you guys hear my talks to Will Levis, I loved Matthew Stafford.
Yeah.
Love Jared Goff now. He proved me wrong. That's what the J-Rod 16 is for. I'll stand right behind that guy all day. He is our guy. So just want peace across everywhere with everybody.
Hey, do me one quick favor. Do me one quick favor. I'm sure you can do this. Send in a chat message right now to the chat. I'm gonna put my hands up, and you're on the phone.
Yeah.
So just send it. Go to YouTube and just send it in.
Give me 1 second, okay, Will?
Yep.
I called you on my phone. I usually chat on that, so just a second.
This is ridiculous, but this is how toxic media is today in Detroit. And so I promised J-Rod that we would do this because I can't stand negativity. Right? I can't stand people that treat people like crap for no reason. And what's really alarming is the fact that if you do think it's me, well, then I'm just going to say this. You don't have
I just sent it through. J-Rod is here.
There you go. So if you do think if they really did think it was me, what's hilarious, J-Rod, is I was just standing next to a lot of these people at the combine. They don't say one thing. They don't come near me. And then they're like a mouse in church, man. And then they get back to their room or whatever, and they, as soon as the combine's done, and they start running their fingers.
Right, and seeing that's where I've had a little issue, and I've been trying to stand up because they've come at you and Will or you and Eric a little bit, and then when I would say something, I'm like, wait, why are they thinking I am Will Rock? Hold on a second.
Yeah,
what is going on here?
Oh wait, according to Gino, I was able to type with my elbows. Damn it! So. I don't know. Maybe I need to hang upside down and I don't know.
Let me get my computer set up down in the basement. Me and my daughter are setting some things she wants upstairs. I'm going to put my den downstairs again, and I'll do a Zoom or something in with you, or come in and do a little show with you. I don't care.
There you go. That'd be fun, man. Get that set up. Oh, we just got something from ESPN here. Sonny Styles breaking down his own film. Well, I'm going to watch this. This is on ESPN NFL on YouTube, so I would head over to that. When you guys are done here, go check that out. J-Rod, man, appreciate you, and I'm going to get out of here because I need some food, and people grow up, man. Treat J-Rod 313 with respect.
You and Eric and all the moderators. They have no idea what we talk about behind the scenes. We're all a family.
There you go.
You know, we're just a family, and we love the Lions, and we love Will Rock and the show he puts on.
There you go, man. Well,
let us be.
I'm nobody without you guys, man. So between the fans, the subscribers, the moderators, I mean, anybody and everybody that comes in to listen, the scouts, the coaches. I mean, there's a lot of people that come in here. So just know that this is not the regular. This is not what we do every day. What we do every day is high level, football knowledge and have fun. So J-Rod, have a good day, man.
That's right. You too, sir. I appreciate it.
All right, brother. Take care.
Yeah, bye-bye.
I should have mentioned there, too, that, when we get together this year, because we're going to do something. We're going to have a little barbecue or something this year, finally. I wanted to do it last year, but I do want to do the summer tailgate. And that's where we're going to get some Lions fans together just to go hang out somewhere in a park. I tried to put it together the last year and a half, I guess. We have to do it this year. I'll furnish all the food in that. Maybe we'll put some tickets out there to raise some money, but between the golf tournaments and the summer tailgate, I think it's a great way for us to just get together, have fun. Maybe we'll do it at a frisbee golf, course. Like there's a really good one over on 84th Street in Byron Center in the greater Grand Rapids area. It's a huge park. I forget the name of the park, but they've got an amazing frisbee golf area. I haven't played in many years, but I would love to do it again. And they've got barbecue areas set up. Of course, I can always bring all my stuff. Bring the trailer loaded down. We'll do a full tailgate. I'm just gonna set it up like a tailgate. Parking lot. You can drink there if you care about drinking. I'll drink my high quality H2O. You guys do what you want to do. Just drive safe. That or bring a tent. Something. I don't know. Get a camping spot if you're coming from the east side. Get a camp spot. There's a spot down by my house. You guys can go camp. So, all right, you guys are wonderful. Let's get back at it tomorrow and stay cool. All right? Go watch Sonny Styles because I'm going to do that next. Adios. As soon as I figure out where I put everything now. Here we go.
Pressured by Hutchinson, he goes down.